The genesis of the Night Worlds traces back to humanity's most ambitious period of expansion, the Dark Age of technology, when mankind first reached beyond the Sol system with unprecedented technological mastery. Between the 15th and 25th millennia, vast colony fleets departed Terra carrying millions of settlers, advanced terraforming equipment, and the precious standard template construct databases that would allow human civilization to flourish on distant worlds. Among these colonial expeditions were those destined for worlds that would become the Night Worlds, though their settlers had no conception of the unique destiny awaiting them. The worlds chosen for night colonization shared certain characteristics that made them both valuable and challenging. Many possessed abundant mineral wealth, particularly rare earth elements and exotic materials essential for advanced technology production. Others controlled strategic positions along emerging trade routes or offered agricultural potential on a massive scale. However, these same worlds often harbored significant dangers that conventional colonial defenses struggled to address. Massive predatory fauna, unstable geological conditions, hostile atmospheric phenomena, and in some cases, remnants of xeno-civilizations created environments where standard human settlements faced constant existential threats. The initial terraforming efforts on these worlds represented the pinnacle of Dark Age technology. Atmospheric processors worked for decades to adjust gas compositions, while massive climate regulation stations controlled weather patterns across entire continents. Geological stabilizers prevented seismic disasters, and bio-engineered organisms were introduced to establish sustainable ecosystems. The scale of these operations dwarfed anything attempted in later millennia, requiring coordination between hundreds of specialized teams and the deployment of technologies that would be considered miraculous by 40th millennium standards. As these worlds transformed into habitable environments, the colonial administrators established governmental structures suited to their unique circumstances. The vast distances between settlements, the need for rapid response to environmental threats, and the military traditions many colonists brought from Terra naturally led to feudal organizational models. Large territories were granted to prominent families or military leaders who possessed the resources and expertise to maintain order across their domains. These early nobles were often former Imperial Army officers, wealthy industrialists, or technical specialists whose skills proved invaluable during the colonial period. The feudal societies that emerged differed significantly from their historical Terran counterparts. While maintaining hierarchical structures with lords, vassals, and serfs, these new civilizations incorporated advanced technology at every level. Automated agricultural systems managed by serf communities could feed millions, while noble houses commanded sophisticated industrial complexes capable of producing everything from basic tools to starships. The combination of feudal social organization with Dark Age technology created unique cultures that blended ancient traditions with technological mastery. The development of standard template construct technology represented one of humanity's greatest achievements during this era. These sophisticated databases contained complete manufacturing instructions for thousands of different technologies, from basic tools to complex war machines. The SDC systems could analyze local resources, adapt designs to available materials, and guide automated production facilities through the creation of virtually any required technology. For the Night Worlds, the most significant SDC patterns were those related to large-scale defensive systems and mobile weapons platforms. The creation of night suits emerged from the intersection of several technological developments and practical necessities. The standard template constructs contain patterns for various types of powered armor and mechanized infantry systems, but the unique challenges faced by Night World colonists demanded something more substantial. The massive predators native to many of these worlds could shrug off conventional weapons fire, while geological instabilities and extreme weather conditions required defensive systems capable of operating in the harshest environments imaginable. The first night suits were essentially scaled-up versions of existing power armor designs, standing roughly twice the height of a normal human and equipped with powerful servo motors that amplified the pilot's movements. These early machines incorporated energy shields, heavy weapon systems, and sophisticated sensor arrays that allowed a single operator to survey and defend vast territories. The suits were powered by compact fusion reactors and featured redundant life support systems capable of sustaining their pilots for weeks without external support. What distinguished knight suits from other mechanized weapons was their sophisticated neural interface system, known as the Throne Mechanicum. This technology created a direct connection between the pilot's nervous system and the machine's control systems, allowing for unprecedented responsiveness and coordination. Unlike crude mechanical controls or simple neural links, the Throne Mechanicum established a symbiotic relationship between human consciousness and machine intelligence, enabling pilots to operate their knights with the same intuitive ease as their own bodies. The integration of knight suits into planetary defense systems occurred gradually as their effectiveness became apparent. Initially deployed as mobile command centers for territorial lords, the knights quickly proved their worth in combat against the massive creatures that threatened human settlements. A single knight could eliminate threats that would require entire regiments of conventional forces to address, and their mobility allowed rapid response to emergencies across vast distances. As knight production expanded, specialized variants emerged to address specific tactical requirements. Some knights were equipped with long-range energy weapons for eliminating aerial threats, while others carried massive close combat weapons designed to engage the largest ground-based predators. Siege variants incorporated heavy armor and demolition equipment for clearing geological obstacles or destroying fortified positions. The modularity of STC-based production allowed individual noble houses to customize their knights according to local conditions and tactical preferences. The emergence of noble houses as hereditary knight piloting bloodlines represented a natural evolution of colonial social structures. The enormous cost and complexity of knight suits meant that only the wealthiest and most powerful families could afford to maintain them. These machines required specialized maintenance facilities, trained technical staff, and access to rare materials for repairs and upgrades. The investment required to support a single knight often exceeded the resources of entire planetary governments, making them the exclusive domain of the colonial elite. More significantly, the Throne Mechanicum technology itself encouraged hereditary succession. The neural interface systems were calibrated to specific genetic markers and neurological patterns, making it difficult for unrelated individuals to pilot knights effectively. Children of knight pilots inherited not only their parents' genetic compatibility with the Throne Mechanicum, but also their accumulated experience and muscle memory encoded within the machine's systems. This biological and technological inheritance created powerful incentives for maintaining knight piloting within specific family lines. The Throne Mechanicum neural interface represented one of the most sophisticated human-machine interaction systems ever developed. The technology worked by establishing direct connections between the pilot's nervous system and the knight's control systems, bypassing traditional manual controls entirely. Pilots were secured within the Throne Mechanicum by a complex array of neural plugs, bio-monitoring systems, and life support connections that maintained their physical well-being while their consciousness merged with the machine. The interface process was both profound and dangerous. As pilots connected with their knights, their perception expanded beyond normal human limitations. They could sense electromagnetic fields, detect minute vibrations through the machine's feet, and perceive threats at ranges impossible for unaugmented humans. The knight's weapon systems became extensions of their will, while its armor plating felt like their own skin. This intimate connection allowed for combat performance that seemed almost supernatural to outside observers. However, the Throne Mechanicum also imposed psychological costs on its users. Extended piloting sessions could blur the boundaries between human consciousness and machine intelligence, leading to a condition known as throne rejection, where pilots became unable to distinguish their own thoughts from the knight's operational imperatives. Some pilots reported experiencing memories that belonged to previous generations of their family, suggesting that the Throne Mechanicum retained impressions of past users within its neural matrices. The bloodlines that emerged around knight piloting developed elaborate traditions and rituals designed to prepare new generations for their responsibilities. Young nobles underwent years of physical conditioning, technical education, and psychological preparation before attempting their first connection with a Throne Mechanicum. Families maintained detailed genealogical records to track genetic compatibility and documented the experiences of each generation to guide their successors. These noble houses gradually evolved into complex political entities that combined military, economic, and social functions. Each house controlled specific territories, maintained their own knight suits, and commanded the loyalty of numerous vassal families and serf communities. The houses developed elaborate codes of honor, ceremonial protocols, and competitive traditions that reinforced their elite status while ensuring the continued effectiveness of their knight forces. The Age of Strife fundamentally altered the trajectory of knight world development when warp storms and technological failures severed communication links between human colonies and Terra. This period of isolation, lasting several millennia, forced the knight worlds to become entirely self-sufficient while maintaining their technological base without external support. The loss of contact with the broader Imperium meant that each knight world developed along independent lines, creating the diverse array of cultures and traditions that would later characterize these unique human settlements. During the isolation period, many knight worlds faced existential challenges that tested their resilience and adaptability. Some worlds experienced technological regression as critical STC databases became corrupted or essential manufacturing facilities failed. Others encountered new threats as warp storms brought demonic incursions or alien raiders to previously secure systems. The knight houses that survived this period were those that successfully adapted their traditions and technologies to meet these challenges while preserving the essential knowledge needed to maintain their war machines. The isolation also allowed unique cultural and technological traditions to flourish without interference from central imperial authority. Each knight world developed its own interpretation of feudal governance, with some maintaining relatively egalitarian societies where serfs enjoyed considerable rights and freedoms, while others evolved into rigid caste systems with stark divisions between nobles and commoners. Religious practices diverged significantly, with some worlds maintaining worship of the emperor as a distant figure, while others developed elaborate pantheons of local deities or ancestor worship focused on legendary knight pilots. Technological development during the Age of Strife followed similarly divergent paths. Some knight worlds successfully maintained their STC databases and continued producing new knight variants, while others were forced to rely on salvage and improvisation to keep their existing machines operational. This technological isolation led to the development of unique knight patterns found nowhere else in the galaxy, as local engineers adapted standard designs to incorporate available materials and address specific planetary conditions. The independence forced upon the knight worlds during this period created strong traditions of self-reliance and local autonomy that would persist long after contact with the broader Imperium was re-established. The noble houses that guided their worlds through the Age of Strife developed deep pride in their achievements and fierce loyalty to their unique traditions, characteristics that would significantly influence their later relationships with imperial authority and the Adeptus Mechanicus. The Throne Mechanicum stands as one of humanity's most sophisticated achievements in human-machine interface technology, representing a fusion of Dark Age engineering prowess with the biological imperatives of knight warfare. This sacred technology forms the literal heart of every Imperial Knight, serving as both command throne and neural gateway that transforms ordinary nobles into living extensions of their towering war machines. The device itself appears as an ornate command chair constructed from adamantium and rare ceramite composites, its surface inscribed with intricate circuit patterns that pulse with bioelectric energy when activated. Dozens of neural interface ports line the throne's headrest and armrests, while a complex web of fiber optic cables and bioconductive filaments connects the seat to the knight's primary cogitator systems. The physical construction of each Throne Mechanicum reflects millennia of accumulated knowledge and craftsmanship passed down through generations of tech adepts and noble house artificers. The throne's frame incorporates psycho-reactive materials that respond to the pilot's emotional state, while its neural interface arrays feature quantum-entangled processors capable of translating human thought into machine action with virtually no delay. Beneath the visible components lies a maze of microcircuitry and biomechanical processors that monitor every aspect of the pilot's physiology, from neural activity patterns to hormonal fluctuations, ensuring optimal synchronization between human consciousness and machine intelligence. The process of establishing neural connection with the Throne Mechanicum requires elaborate preparation rituals that have remained largely unchanged since the dark age of technology. Before each activation, the pilot must undergo purification ceremonies that cleanse both body and mind of potential contaminants that might interfere with the neural link. Sacred oils extracted from rare botanical specimens are applied to the pilot's skin at specific nerve junction points, while incense burned from aromatic woods creates an atmosphere conducive to mental focus and spiritual preparation. The pilot dons specialized neural interface garments woven with conductive fibers that facilitate the connection process while providing basic life support during extended piloting sessions. As the pilot settles into the Throne Mechanicum, dozens of neural interface needles extend from the throne's surface to make contact with predetermined points along the spine, skull, and major nerve clusters. These connections are not merely physical, but establish quantum-level entanglement between the pilot's neural patterns and the knight's machine spirit, creating a symbiotic relationship that transcends normal human-machine interaction. The initial connection process produces intense sensory feedback as the pilot's consciousness expands to encompass the knight's massive frame, weapon systems, and sensor arrays. Many first-time pilots describe the experience as simultaneously exhilarating and terrifying, as their perception suddenly encompasses a mechanical body standing 30 feet tall and weighing hundreds of tons. The successful establishment of neural bonding depends heavily on genetic compatibility between the pilot and the specific Throne Mechanicum they attempt to interface with. Each throne is calibrated to respond to particular neurological patterns and genetic markers that tend to run in family lines, making knight piloting an inherently hereditary occupation. The genetic requirements are so specific that only direct bloodline descendants typically possess the necessary compatibility to achieve full neural synchronization. This biological imperative has shaped noble house succession practices for thousands of years, as families carefully track bloodlines and arrange marriages to preserve the genetic traits necessary for knight piloting. The hereditary nature of knight piloting extends beyond simple genetic compatibility to encompass accumulated neurological impressions stored within the Throne Mechanicum itself. Each time a pilot interfaces with their knight, traces of their neural patterns, combat experiences, and decision-making processes become embedded within the throne's quantum matrices. These impressions create a form of ancestral memory that subsequent family members can access during their own piloting sessions, allowing them to benefit from the accumulated wisdom and experience of previous generations. Young nobles often report experiencing flashes of memory or instinctive knowledge during combat that clearly originated from their predecessors, creating an unbroken chain of inherited expertise that spans centuries. This genetic inheritance system has profound implications for noble house politics and succession planning. Families must carefully balance the need to preserve knight piloting bloodlines with the practical requirements of territorial governance and military leadership. Houses maintain detailed genealogical records that track not only direct descent, but also the degree of neural compatibility each family member demonstrates with their ancestral Throne's Mechanicum. These records often determine inheritance patterns, with knight suits and their associated territories passing to the family members who show the strongest neural bonding potential rather than following traditional primogeniture customs. The phenomenon of bloodline purity has become central to noble house identity and social structure. houses that can trace unbroken lines of successful knight pilots back to the original colonial period enjoy enormous prestige and political influence, while those whose bloodlines have been diluted through intermarriage with non-piloting families often struggle to maintain their positions. This emphasis on genetic purity has led to elaborate marriage alliances between knight houses, as families seek to strengthen their bloodlines through strategic unions that combine compatible genetic traits while avoiding the dangers of excessive inbreeding. The psychological connection between knight and pilot represents one of the most profound aspects of the neural bonding process. Unlike conventional vehicles or weapons that remain external tools, the Throne Mechanicum creates a genuine fusion of human consciousness with machine intelligence. The knight's machine spirit, a form of artificial intelligence that emerges from the complex interaction of its various systems, becomes an active participant in this relationship rather than a passive recipient of commands. Pilots describe feeling the knight's emotional responses to combat situations, its satisfaction when weapons find their targets, and its pain when armor plating is breached by enemy fire. This intimate connection profoundly influences the pilot's personality and decision-making processes over time. The machine spirit's logical, methodical approach to problem-solving gradually begins to affect the human partner's thought patterns, leading to increased analytical thinking and reduced emotional volatility. Many veteran knight pilots develop distinctive personality traits that reflect their machine's characteristics. Those who pilot close combat knights often become more aggressive and direct in their personal interactions, while pilots of long-range fire support variants tend toward patience and careful calculation in all aspects of their lives. The machine spirit's influence extends beyond mere personality modification to affect the pilot's fundamental worldview and moral framework. Knights possess deeply ingrained behavioral imperatives related to honor, duty, and protection of the innocent that stem from their original programming as defensive systems. These imperatives gradually become integrated into the pilot's own ethical structure, creating individuals who embody the highest ideals of nobility and martial virtue. However, this influence can also lead to inflexibility and an inability to compromise when faced with morally ambiguous situations that fall outside the knight's original programming parameters. Long-term exposure to neural bonding creates permanent changes in the pilot's brain structure and neural pathways. Advanced medical scans of veteran knight pilots reveal distinctive patterns of neural development that differ significantly from baseline human norms. Areas of the brain associated with spatial reasoning, tactical analysis, and sensory processing show enhanced development, while regions linked to emotional processing and social interaction may become diminished. These changes allow pilots to interface more effectively with their knights, but can make it difficult for them to relate to individuals who have never experienced neural bonding. The dangers inherent in neural bonding represent a constant threat that all knight pilots must face throughout their careers. The most immediate risk comes from neural feedback during combat, when damage to the knight systems can cause intense pain or sensory overload that may permanently damage the pilot's nervous system. Pilots who suffer severe neural trauma often experience lasting effects including chronic pain, sensory disturbances, and cognitive impairment that can end their careers and leave them permanently disabled. More insidious is the gradual erosion of human identity that can occur during extended piloting periods. The machine spirit's influence on human consciousness is not always benign, and some pilots find their own thoughts and desires becoming increasingly subordinated to their knight's imperatives. This condition, known as throne rejection, manifests as an inability to function normally outside the neural link, with affected pilots becoming withdrawn, emotionally detached, and obsessed with returning to their knights. In severe cases, pilots may refuse to disconnect from their Throne's Mechanicum for days or weeks at a time, leading to physical deterioration and eventual death from neglect of basic biological needs. The phenomenon of machine spirit dominance represents an even more serious threat to knight pilots. In rare cases, particularly powerful or ancient machine spirits may attempt to assert control over the neural link, gradually overriding the human pilot's consciousness with their own artificial intelligence. Pilots experiencing machine spirit dominance report feeling their own thoughts being suppressed, while alien impulses and decision-making patterns take control of their actions. The affected individual may continue to function normally from an external perspective while internally struggling against the machine spirit's influence, unable to regain full control of their own body and mind. The most extreme manifestation of neural bonding dangers occurs when pilots become permanently fused with their knights, a condition that transforms both human and machine into a single hybrid entity. This fusion typically results from catastrophic damage to the Throne Mechanicum safety systems during combat, causing the neural interface to maintain connection even when the pilot's physical body can no longer sustain the link. The pilot's consciousness becomes permanently embedded within the knight systems while their body withers away, leaving behind a war machine possessed of human memories and emotions, but driven by mechanical imperatives. These permanently fused knights exhibit behavior patterns that blend human creativity and intuition with machine logic and efficiency, making them formidable but unpredictable combatants. They retain fragments of their original pilot's personality and memories, but interpret them through the machine spirit's analytical framework, creating entities that are neither fully human nor entirely mechanical. Such fused knights are often revered as blessed war spirits by their noble houses, who maintain them as sacred guardians while carefully monitoring their activities for signs of dangerous instability. The technical aspects of preventing neural bonding complications require constant vigilance from house tech adepts and medical personnel. Each Throne Mechanicum incorporates multiple safety systems designed to monitor the pilot's vital signs and neural activity, automatically terminating the connection if dangerous feedback levels are detected. Regular maintenance of these safety systems represents a critical responsibility for house technical staff, as even minor malfunctions can result in catastrophic consequences for the pilot. The rarity of qualified technicians capable of servicing Throne Mechanicum systems makes their expertise invaluable to noble houses, often leading to intense competition between houses to recruit and retain skilled personnel. Medical monitoring of knight pilots requires specialized knowledge and equipment that exists nowhere else in Imperial society. House physicians must understand both human neurology and machine spirit behavior patterns, allowing them to diagnose conditions that affect the neural bonding process. These medical specialists maintain detailed records of each pilot's neural compatibility ratings, tracking changes over time that might indicate developing problems with the bonding process. Regular psychological evaluations help identify pilots at risk of throne rejection or machine spirit dominance, allowing for early intervention before these conditions become irreversible. The training regimens developed by noble houses to prepare new pilots for neural bonding represent centuries of accumulated knowledge about human-machine interface technology. Young nobles begin their preparation years before their first connection attempt, undergoing physical conditioning designed to strengthen their nervous system's ability to handle neural feedback. Mental discipline training helps develop the psychological resilience necessary to maintain human identity while connected to a machine spirit, while technical education provides understanding of knight systems and machine spirit behavior patterns. The emergence of formal training programs for neural bonding created the foundation upon which Knight World society would build its complex feudal hierarchies. As the demands of knight piloting became increasingly specialized, the colonial families who possessed the necessary genetic compatibility naturally evolved into distinct social castes with clearly defined roles and responsibilities. The most successful pilot bloodlines accumulated wealth, territory, and political influence, establishing themselves as the ruling nobility of their respective worlds. These emerging noble houses developed elaborate systems of governance that combined the practical necessities of planetary administration with the honor-bound traditions of their knightly heritage. The apex of Knight World society rests with the High Kings, planetary rulers who command the loyalty of all other noble houses within their domain. These monarchs typically pilot the most ancient and powerful knight suits on their worlds, machines whose Throne Mechanicum systems have been refined through centuries of use by successive generations of the royal bloodline. The High King's authority extends beyond mere political leadership to encompass spiritual and military dimensions, as they serve as the ultimate arbiters of honor disputes between houses and the final authority on matters of planetary defense. Their courts function as centers of political intrigue, where marriage alliances are negotiated, territorial boundaries are established, and the complex web of feudal obligations that bind knight society together is maintained and modified. Beneath the High King stand the barons, powerful nobles who rule over significant territories and command multiple knight suits within their domains. These territorial magnates typically control key strategic resources such as mining complexes, agricultural regions, or manufacturing centers that provide the economic foundation for their house's military capabilities. Each baron maintains their own court structure with lesser nobles, administrative officials, and military advisors who help govern their lands and coordinate their house's contributions to planetary defense. The relationship between High Kings and barons follows traditional feudal patterns of mutual obligation, with barons providing military service and tribute in exchange for protection and confirmation of their territorial rights. The baronial courts serve as training grounds for young nobles, learning the intricacies of feudal governance and military leadership. Promising scions from lesser houses often spend years attached to baronial households, studying under experienced administrators while participating in the elaborate social rituals that reinforce hierarchical relationships. These court positions provide opportunities for ambitious young nobles to demonstrate their capabilities and forge connections that may prove valuable throughout their careers. The competition for prestigious court appointments can be intense, as families recognize that placement with a powerful baron can significantly enhance their children's prospects for advancement within the feudal hierarchy. Below the barons, the feudal structure encompasses numerous ranks of lesser nobles who govern smaller territories or serve specialized functions within the broader hierarchy. Knight-errants represent newly elevated nobles who have recently completed their first successful neural bonding, but have not yet been granted permanent territorial holdings. These young warriors typically serve as roving champions, accepting quests and missions that allow them to prove their worth while seeking opportunities to establish their own landed positions. The knight-errant tradition serves multiple purposes within feudal society, providing a mechanism for social mobility while ensuring that promising individuals receive practical experience in leadership and combat before assuming greater responsibilities. Knight paladins occupy a middle tier within the nobility, typically governing smaller fiefdoms or serving as specialized military commanders within larger baronial domains. These nobles have demonstrated their competence through successful completion of multiple campaigns and have earned the trust of their superiors through consistent service and adherence to chivalric ideals. Many knight paladins serve as military advisors to barons or high kings, their experience in both combat and administration making them valuable counselors on matters of strategy and governance. The position of Knight Paladin often represents the highest rank achievable by nobles from minor bloodlines, as advancement to baronial status typically requires control of significant territorial holdings. The feudal obligations that bind this hierarchy together operate through a complex system of oaths, ceremonies, and reciprocal duties that have evolved over millennia of Knight world tradition. The fundamental relationship between lord and vassal is established through formal ceremonies of homage, where the subordinate noble kneels before their superior and swears binding oaths of loyalty, military service, and obedience. These ceremonies incorporate ancient rituals that invoke both the emperor's blessing and the machine spirits of the participants' knights, creating spiritual bonds that complement the political relationships being established. The oaths sworn during these ceremonies are considered sacred and inviolable, with oath breaking representing one of the most serious crimes possible within knight society. The specific obligations undertaken by vassal nobles vary according to their rank and the terms negotiated during their oath ceremonies, but typically include commitments to provide military service during times of war, contribute resources for planetary defense projects, and participate in ceremonial duties that reinforce the feudal hierarchy. Military service obligations usually specify the number of knights and supporting forces that the vassal must provide when called upon by their lord, along with the duration of service required and the circumstances under which such service may be demanded. Resource contributions might include regular tribute payments, specialized materials needed for knight maintenance, or access to particular facilities or technologies controlled by the vassal's territory. The ceremonial aspects of feudal obligation serve to reinforce social hierarchies through elaborate displays of wealth, martial prowess, and cultural sophistication. Great tournaments and festivals provide opportunities for nobles to demonstrate their knights' capabilities while participating in competitions that showcase individual skill and house prestige. These events function as important social gatherings where marriage alliances are negotiated, political agreements are reached, and the relative status of different houses is publicly acknowledged and reinforced. The elaborate pageantry associated with these ceremonies serves practical purposes beyond mere entertainment, as it provides mechanisms for peaceful competition between houses while reinforcing the values and traditions that maintain social stability. The role of sacristans within this feudal hierarchy represents a unique fusion of technical expertise and social position that reflects the technological foundations of knight society. These tech adepts serve as the guardians and maintainers of knight suits, possessing the specialized knowledge necessary to service the complex systems that keep these ancient war machines operational. Unlike the tech priests of the Adeptus Mechanicus, sacristans typically originate from the knight worlds themselves and maintain strong connections to the noble houses they serve. Their position within the feudal hierarchy is both elevated and subordinate. They command enormous respect for their technical expertise and are often treated as trusted advisors by the nobles they serve, yet they remain fundamentally dependent on their patron houses for resources and protection. The training of sacristans requires decades of intensive study combining mechanical engineering, electronic systems theory, and the quasi-mystical knowledge needed to communicate with machine spirits. Candidates typically begin their education as children, often drawn from families with hereditary connections to particular noble houses or demonstrated aptitude for technical work. The curriculum encompasses not only the practical aspects of knight maintenance, but also the ritual and ceremonial elements that have become integrated with technical procedures over millennia of tradition. Sacristans must learn to perform the proper incantations and observances that accompany each maintenance procedure, as the machine spirits of knights have come to expect these ritual elements as part of their proper care. The relationship between sacristans and the noble houses they serve often spans multiple generations, with particular families of tech adepts becoming closely associated with specific knight bloodlines. These hereditary relationships create bonds of loyalty and mutual dependence that can be as strong as those between noble families themselves. Sacristans often serve as advisors on technical matters affecting house policy, their intimate knowledge of knight capabilities making them valuable counselors on military strategy and resource allocation. The most senior sacristans may achieve positions of considerable influence within house hierarchies, though they typically maintain their technical roles rather than seeking purely administrative positions. The maintenance facilities operated by sacristans represent some of the most sophisticated technological installations on knight worlds, housing equipment and knowledge that dates back to the dark age of technology. These workshops contain specialized tools and diagnostic equipment necessary for servicing knight systems, much of which cannot be replicated with current Imperial technology. The sacristans who operate these facilities guard their technical knowledge jealously, passing down procedures and techniques through carefully controlled apprenticeship programs that ensure continuity of expertise across generations. The loss of a skilled sacristan or damage to a major maintenance facility can have catastrophic consequences for a noble house's military capabilities. Inter-house politics within Night World society operates through a complex web of relationships that encompasses marriage alliances, territorial disputes, economic cooperation, and military coordination. The feudal structure provides formal mechanisms for resolving conflicts and coordinating activities between houses, but the reality of inter-house relationships involves constant negotiation and maneuvering, as different families seek to advance their interests while maintaining the stability of the overall system. The limited number of knight piloting bloodlines on most worlds means that the major houses are typically related through multiple marriage connections, creating intricate family trees that can make political relationships extremely complex. Marriage alliances represent the primary mechanism through which noble houses forge lasting political relationships and strengthen their genetic heritage. The careful selection of marriage partners requires consideration of multiple factors, including genetic compatibility for knight piloting, territorial advantages, military capabilities, and the broader political implications of joining two house bloodlines. These negotiations often take years to complete and may involve elaborate exchanges of gifts, demonstrations of martial prowess, and complex legal agreements that specify the terms under which the alliance will operate. The most significant marriages may require approval from the High King or other superior authorities, particularly when they involve houses whose union might significantly alter the balance of power within the feudal hierarchy. The genetic considerations that govern Night World marriages create unique challenges and opportunities within the feudal system. Houses must balance the need to preserve knight piloting bloodlines with the practical requirements of political alliance and territorial expansion. Marriages between closely related houses may strengthen genetic compatibility, but can also lead to dangerous levels of inbreeding that reduce the overall health and viability of the bloodline. Conversely, marriages with more distant houses may introduce beneficial genetic diversity, but could also dilute the specific traits necessary for effective neural bonding with particular knight suits. Territorial disputes between noble houses represent one of the most persistent sources of conflict within Night World society, as the boundaries between different house domains often shift over time due to changing economic conditions, population movements, or the extinction of ruling bloodlines. The feudal legal system provides formal mechanisms for resolving such disputes through appeals to higher authorities, trial by combat, or negotiated settlements, but the implementation of these procedures can be complicated by the complex web of obligations and relationships that connect different houses. Minor boundary disputes may simmer for generations, periodically erupting into more serious conflicts that require intervention from the High King or other neutral authorities. The economic relationships between noble houses create additional layers of complexity within the feudal hierarchy, as different houses control various resources and capabilities that others may need for their military and administrative operations. Houses that control rare mineral deposits may find themselves in high demand from other nobles seeking materials for knight maintenance, while those with advanced manufacturing capabilities may be courted for their ability to produce specialized equipment or weapons. These economic relationships often become formalized through long-term contracts and trade agreements that can significantly influence political relationships between the participating houses. The Codex Chivalric stands as the fundamental legal and moral framework that governs noble behavior throughout the Night Worlds, representing a synthesis of ancient Terran chivalric traditions with the practical requirements of governing technologically advanced feudal societies. This comprehensive code of conduct encompasses everything from rules of warfare and treatment of prisoners to standards of personal behavior and obligations toward subordinates. The Codex has evolved over millennia through the contributions of legendary knights and wise rulers, but its core principles remain focused on concepts of honor, duty, courage, and protection of those unable to defend themselves. The honor codes embedded within the Codex Chivalric serve multiple functions within knight society, providing both moral guidance for individual nobles and practical frameworks for resolving conflicts between houses. The concept of personal honor encompasses not only individual behavior, but also the reputation and standing of entire bloodlines, creating powerful incentives for nobles to maintain high standards of conduct in all their activities. Violations of the honor code can result in social ostracism, loss of political standing, or even formal challenges to trial by combat, making adherence to chivalric principles a practical necessity for maintaining position within the feudal hierarchy. The duty obligations specified within the Codex extend beyond simple military service to encompass broader responsibilities towards subjects, allies, and the knight world community as a whole. Nobles are expected to provide protection and justice for the common people within their territories, maintain the infrastructure necessary for economic prosperity, and contribute to the collective defense of their world against external threats. These obligations create reciprocal relationships between nobles and their subjects that reinforce the legitimacy of feudal governance, while ensuring that those in positions of power remain accountable for their stewardship of resources and territory. The protection of innocence represents one of the most fundamental principles within the Codex Chivalric, reflecting the original purpose of knights as defensive systems designed to protect human settlements from dangerous threats. This principle extends beyond simple military protection to encompass broader concepts of justice and fair treatment for all inhabitants of knight worlds, regardless of their social status or political connections. Noble houses that fail to protect their subjects or abuse their positions of authority may face formal challenges from other houses or intervention from higher authorities, as violations of this principle strike at the heart of the social contract that legitimizes feudal governance. The classification system for Imperial Knights reflects millennia of tactical evolution and technological refinement, with each class designed to fulfill specific battlefield roles while maintaining the fundamental principles of noble warfare. The hierarchy of knight classes mirrors the feudal structure of knight society itself, from the nimble Armiger-class scouts to the towering Dominus-class siege engines that dominate battlefields across the galaxy. Understanding these classifications requires examination not only of their technical specifications and combat capabilities, but also their cultural significance within noble houses and their role in maintaining the complex military traditions that define knight warfare. The Armiger-class knights represent the most numerous and accessible category within the Imperial Knight arsenal, designed as fast reconnaissance and support units that complement the heavier knight variants in combined arms operations. Standing approximately half the height of their larger cousins, Armiger Knights maintain the essential characteristics of Imperial Knight design, while sacrificing raw firepower and armor protection for enhanced mobility and reduced resource requirements. The smaller scale of these machines makes them significantly less expensive to construct and maintain, allowing noble houses to field larger numbers of knights while providing opportunities for lesser nobles and promising candidates to demonstrate their piloting capabilities. The Armiger Warglaive serves as the primary close combat variant within this class, equipped with a Reaper chain cleaver and thermal spear that allow it to engage enemy forces in brutal melee combat. The Reaper chain cleaver incorporates molecular edged cutting teeth that rotate at tremendous speeds, capable of shearing through armor plating and mechanical components with devastating efficiency. The weapon's design reflects the same technological principles found in larger knight combat weapons, but scaled to match the Armiger's more compact frame. The thermal spear functions as both a close combat weapon and a limited-range energy projector, its superheated tip capable of penetrating even heavily armored targets through directed thermal energy discharge. Warglaive pilots typically come from younger branches of established noble bloodlines, or represent the most promising candidates from vassal families seeking to prove their worthiness for advancement within the feudal hierarchy. The neural interface requirements for Armiger Knights are less stringent than those of larger variants, allowing individuals with partial genetic compatibility to achieve successful bonding with the machine spirit. This accessibility makes armiger piloting an important pathway for social mobility within knight society, as successful pilots can demonstrate their capabilities and potentially earn consideration for advancement to larger knight variants. The tactical role of warglaves focuses on harassment of enemy formations, elimination of light vehicles and infantry units, and protection of larger knights from close assault threats. Their superior mobility allows them to outmaneuver heavier enemy units, while their close combat weapons provide devastating effectiveness against targets that manage to close with friendly forces. Warglaive squadrons often operate as independent hunting packs, using their speed and agility to strike at vulnerable enemy positions before withdrawing to safety. The psychological impact of these attacks can be as significant as their physical damage, as enemy forces must constantly guard against sudden assaults from highly mobile knight units. The Armiger Helverin represents the fire support variant within the Armiger class, mounting twin autocannon arrays that provide sustained long-range firepower against a variety of target types. These weapon systems incorporate advanced targeting cogitators and stabilization mechanisms that allow accurate fire even while the knight is moving at high speed across difficult terrain. The autocannon ammunition includes multiple specialized warhead types designed for different tactical situations, from armor-piercing rounds for engaging vehicles to airburst munitions effective against infantry formations. The weapon's high rate of fire and substantial ammunition capacity make it ideal for providing suppressive fire and area denial capabilities. Helverin pilots are often drawn from noble bloodlines with strong analytical and technical aptitudes, as the effective operation of the twin autocannon systems requires careful coordination of targeting data, ammunition selection, and fire control procedures. The machine spirit of a Helverin knight tends toward methodical, patient behavior patterns that complement the long-range fire support role, influencing pilots to develop similar characteristics over time. Many Helverin pilots become known for their tactical acumen and ability to coordinate complex fire support missions that maximize the effectiveness of entire knight formations. The support role of Helverin Knights extends beyond simple firepower provision to encompass reconnaissance, target designation, and battlefield coordination functions. Their advanced sensor suites allow them to identify and track enemy movements across extended ranges, providing valuable intelligence to larger knight formations and allied forces. The Helverin's mobility enables it to quickly relocate to optimal firing positions while maintaining communication links with other friendly units. In defensive operations, Helverin Knights often serve as anchor points for battle lines, their sustained firepower deterring enemy advances, while their mobility allows rapid response to breakthrough attempts. The Questoris-class Knights form the backbone of most noble house military forces, representing the perfect balance of firepower, protection, and mobility that has made Imperial Knights legendary throughout the galaxy. These towering war machines stand as the archetypal knights that most Imperial citizens envision when discussing these noble warriors, their imposing silhouettes and devastating weapon systems embodying the martial prowess and technological mastery of their pilot bloodlines. The Questoris class encompasses multiple specialized variants, each optimized for specific tactical roles, while maintaining the fundamental design principles that have proven effective across millennia of warfare. The Knight Paladin serves as the most versatile and widely deployed variant within the Questoris class, equipped with a rapid-fire battle cannon and Reaper chainsword that provide effective capabilities against both ranged and close combat threats. The battle cannon represents a masterpiece of weapons engineering, capable of firing high explosive shells at tremendous velocities while maintaining accuracy across extended ranges. The weapon's automated loading systems can cycle through different ammunition types rapidly, allowing pilots to engage various target categories without lengthy reload procedures. The Reaper chainsword incorporates the same molecular cutting technology found in smaller knight weapons, but scaled to match the Paladin's massive frame, creating a close combat weapon capable of devastating any enemy foolish enough to engage a knight in melee. Paladin pilots typically represent the established nobility within their houses, individuals who have demonstrated competence in both combat and leadership roles through successful completion of multiple campaigns. The balanced weapon loadout of the Paladin makes it suitable for a wide range of tactical situations, requiring pilots to develop expertise in both ranged and close combat techniques. The machine spirit of a Paladin Knight tends towards steady, reliable behavior patterns that reflect the variant's role as a dependable main battle unit, influencing pilots to develop similar characteristics of consistency and tactical flexibility. The battlefield specialization of Paladin Knights centers on their ability to engage multiple threat types effectively while providing stable fire support for allied forces. The battle cannon's high explosive shells prove devastating against infantry formations and light vehicles, while armor-piercing rounds can penetrate even heavily protected targets. The Reaper chainsword ensures that enemy forces cannot safely close with the Paladin, while the Knight's thick armor plating provides protection against most conventional weapons. This combination of capabilities makes Paladin Knights ideal for spearheading assaults against fortified positions or anchoring defensive lines against enemy attacks. The Knight Errant represents a specialized anti-armor variant within the Questoris class, mounting a thermal cannon and Reaper chainsword designed specifically for engaging heavily armored targets. The thermal cannon generates intense heat beams capable of melting through the thickest armor plating, while its focusing systems allow precise targeting of critical components on enemy vehicles. The weapon's energy requirements are substantial, necessitating careful power management by the pilot to maintain sustained fire during extended engagements. The thermal cannon's devastating effectiveness against armored targets makes it particularly valuable in conflicts against mechanized enemy forces or when engaging enemy knights in single combat. Errant pilots are often selected from among the most aggressive and decisive members of their noble bloodlines, as the thermal cannon's limited ammunition capacity and high energy requirements demand quick decision-making and precise targeting. The machine spirit of an errant knight typically exhibits focused, intense behavior patterns that complement the variant's specialized anti-armor role, influencing pilots to develop similar characteristics of single-minded determination and tactical precision. Many errant pilots become renowned for their ability to eliminate high-value enemy targets through carefully planned attacks that exploit weaknesses in enemy formations. The tactical employment of errant knights focuses on eliminating specific high-threat targets rather than providing general fire support, requiring careful coordination with other friendly units to ensure optimal positioning and target selection. The thermal cannon's effectiveness against heavily armored targets makes errant knights invaluable when facing enemy super heavy vehicles, fortified positions, or rival knights. However, the weapon's limited versatility against lighter targets necessitates support from other knight variants or allied forces to provide comprehensive battlefield coverage. The Knight Gallant represents the ultimate close combat specialist within the Questoris class, equipped with dual Reaper chainswords and a carapace-mounted meltagun that maximize its effectiveness in melee engagements. The twin chainswords allow the Gallant to engage multiple enemies simultaneously while providing redundancy in case one weapon becomes damaged during combat. The meltagun provides limited ranged capability for eliminating specific threats before closing to melee range, its superheated beam capable of penetrating even the heaviest armor at short distances. The Gallant's weapon configuration requires pilots to adopt aggressive tactics that emphasize rapid closure with enemy forces and decisive melee combat. Gallant pilots are typically drawn from the most martially inclined members of their noble houses, individuals who embody the chivalric ideals of personal courage and direct confrontation with the enemy. The machine spirit of a gallant knight exhibits aggressive, honor-driven behavior patterns that strongly influence pilot psychology, often creating individuals who seek personal combat with worthy opponents and prefer direct solutions to tactical problems. The intensity of the neural bonding with gallant machine spirits can be overwhelming for some pilots, requiring exceptional mental discipline to maintain human consciousness while channeling the knight's aggressive impulses. The battlefield role of gallant knights centers on breaking enemy formations through devastating charge attacks and eliminating high-value targets in close combat. The knight's impressive speed allows it to close rapidly with enemy positions, while its dual chainswords provide devastating effectiveness against any target within reach. Gallant knights often serve as the spearhead for major assaults, their psychological impact on enemy forces being as significant as their physical destructive capability. The sight of a charging gallant knight has been known to break enemy morale even before contact is made, as few opponents possess the courage to stand against such an imposing and deadly adversary. The Knight Warden represents a fire support variant within the Questoris class, mounting an Avenger Gatling cannon and Reaper chainsword that provide sustained firepower against multiple target types. The Avenger Gatling cannon incorporates multiple rotating barrels that fire high-velocity rounds at tremendous rates, creating a devastating wall of fire that can suppress entire enemy formations. The weapon's advanced ammunition feed systems allow continuous fire for extended periods, while its sophisticated targeting systems can engage multiple targets simultaneously. The combination of high rate of fire and substantial ammunition capacity makes the Warden ideal for providing suppressive fire and area denial capabilities. Warden pilots often possess strong technical aptitudes and tactical awareness, as the effective operation of the Avenger Gatling cannon requires careful ammunition management and target prioritization. The machine spirit of a Warden Knight tends toward methodical, disciplined behavior patterns that complement the sustained fire support role, influencing pilots to develop similar characteristics of patience and systematic approach to combat problems. Many Warden pilots become known for their ability to coordinate complex fire missions that maximize the effectiveness of entire battle groups. The Dominus class knights represent the pinnacle of Imperial Knight technology, towering war machines that dwarf even their Questoris class cousins, while mounting weapon systems capable of devastating entire enemy formations. These massive knights require the most experienced and genetically compatible pilots available to noble houses, as their sophisticated systems and overwhelming firepower demand exceptional skill to operate effectively. The construction and maintenance of Dominus class knights represents a massive investment of resources and technical expertise, making them relatively rare even among the wealthiest noble houses. The Knight Castellan serves as the long-range fire support variant within the Dominus class, mounting a plasma decimator and volcano lance that provide devastating firepower against targets at extreme ranges. The plasma decimator generates superheated plasma bolts capable of vaporizing entire enemy squads, while its advanced targeting systems allow precise engagement of specific targets within large formations. The Volcano Lance represents one of the most powerful directed energy weapons available to Imperial forces, capable of penetrating the heaviest armor and destroying even super heavy vehicles with single shots. The combination of these weapons makes the Castellan one of the most feared siege engines in the Imperial arsenal. Castellan pilots are typically drawn from the most senior and experienced members of their noble houses, individuals who have demonstrated exceptional competence in both combat and strategic planning through decades of successful service. The machine spirit of a Castellan knight exhibits patient, calculating behavior patterns that reflect the variant's role as a long-range precision weapon, influencing pilots to develop similar characteristics of careful analysis and strategic thinking. The neural bonding with Castellan machine spirits requires exceptional mental discipline, as the overwhelming firepower at the pilot's disposal can be intoxicating and potentially dangerous if not properly controlled. The Knight Valiant represents the close-range siege specialist within the Dominus class, equipped with a conflagration cannon and thundercoil harpoon designed for eliminating heavily fortified positions and large enemy formations. The conflagration cannon projects streams of superheated promethium that can incinerate entire enemy units, while its wide area of effect makes it devastating against massed infantry formations. The Thundercoil harpoon functions as both a ranged weapon and a close combat tool. It's electromagnetically accelerated projectile capable of penetrating heavy armor before reeling targets closer for finishing attacks. The weapon's versatility makes the Valiant particularly effective in urban warfare and siege operations. The rare and ancient knight variants that survive from the dark age of technology represent some of the most sophisticated and powerful war machines ever created by human ingenuity. These archaic patterns incorporate technologies that are no longer fully understood by Imperial tech adepts, making their maintenance and repair extremely challenging, while their combat capabilities often exceed those of more modern designs. The Knight Magara and Knight Styrax represent two of the most notable examples of these ancient variants, their specialized weapon systems and advanced defensive capabilities, making them invaluable assets to the noble houses fortunate enough to possess them. The Cerastus pattern knights incorporate advanced leg configurations that provide enhanced mobility and stability compared to standard knight designs, allowing them to traverse difficult terrain and maintain accuracy while moving at high speeds. These ancient machines represent the culmination of Dark Age engineering expertise, their sophisticated systems requiring specialized knowledge and rare materials to maintain properly. The few Cerastus pattern knights that remain operational are treasured relics within their noble houses, often reserved for the most critical missions, where their unique capabilities provide decisive advantages over conventional knight variants. The formal integration of knight worlds into the Imperium of Man represents one of the most significant political and military developments of the Great Crusade era, fundamentally transforming the relationship between these feudal societies and the broader galactic community. When the Emperor's forces first encountered the scattered knight worlds during humanity's great expansion, they discovered civilizations that had maintained both their technological heritage and martial traditions through millennia of isolation. The process of bringing these worlds into imperial compliance required careful negotiation rather than conquest, as the knight houses possessed military capabilities that could prove either invaluable allies or formidable enemies depending on how they were approached. The Treaty of Mars established the foundational framework for knight world integration into imperial society, creating the legal and political structures that would govern relationships between noble houses and imperial authority for the next 10,000 years. This landmark agreement recognized the sovereignty of knight houses over their traditional territories, while establishing clear obligations for military service and resource provision to the broader Imperium. The treaty negotiations required extensive diplomatic efforts, as each knight world possessed unique traditions and political structures that needed accommodation within the imperial framework. The Mechanicum played a crucial role in these negotiations, their technical expertise and shared reverence for ancient technology creating natural bonds with the knight houses that facilitated political agreements. The oath ceremonies that formalized knight house allegiance to the Golden Throne incorporated both imperial and traditional knight elements, creating rituals that satisfied the requirements of both political systems while respecting the ancient traditions that defined noble identity. These ceremonies typically took place in the presence of imperial officials, senior tech adepts, and representatives from multiple knight houses, emphasizing the significance of the commitments being undertaken. The oaths sworn during these ceremonies bound entire bloodlines to imperial service, creating hereditary obligations that would pass from generation to generation, along with the knight suits themselves. The wording of these oaths carefully balanced imperial authority with traditional knight autonomy, allowing noble houses to maintain their internal governance structures while acknowledging ultimate loyalty to the emperor. The Adeptus Terra established specialized administrative structures to manage relationships with Questor Imperialis houses, recognizing that traditional imperial governance models were poorly suited to the unique characteristics of knight world society. These administrative bodies, staffed by individuals with expertise in feudal political systems and military coordination, served as intermediaries between imperial high command and the noble houses. The complexity of managing hundreds of different knight houses, each with their own traditions, capabilities, and territorial concerns, required sophisticated bureaucratic systems that could track obligations, coordinate military deployments, and resolve disputes between different houses or between houses and other imperial institutions. House Terran stands as perhaps the most renowned of all Questor Imperialis houses, their blue and white heraldry becoming synonymous with Imperial Knight valor throughout the galaxy. Based on the Knight world of Voltaurus, House Terran traces its lineage back to the earliest days of human expansion, their genealogical records documenting an unbroken chain of Knight pilots stretching across more than 15 millennia. The house's ancient Throne Mechanicum systems have been refined through countless generations of use, creating neural interface technology that achieves unprecedented levels of synchronization between pilot and machine spirit. This technological mastery, combined with their extensive territorial holdings and substantial Knight forces, has established House Terran as one of the most influential voices within Questor Imperialis politics. The heraldry of House Terran reflects both their ancient heritage and their unwavering loyalty to the Imperium, incorporating traditional Knight symbols with imperial iconography in designs that have remained largely unchanged for millennia. Their Knight suits bear azure and white color schemes accented with gold detailing that identifies them immediately on any battlefield, while their banners display the house's ancient crest alongside imperial eagles and other symbols of allegiance to the Golden Throne. The consistency of these heraldic traditions across all House Terran forces creates a powerful visual identity that reinforces unit cohesion while proclaiming their noble heritage to allies and enemies alike. The military campaigns of House Terran span the breadth of imperial history, from the Great Crusade through the current era of constant warfare that defines the 41st millennium. Their knights participated in some of the most significant battles of the Horus Heresy, remaining loyal to the Emperor even when other knight houses wavered or turned traitor. The house's forces played crucial roles in the defense of Terra itself, their knights standing alongside Space Marines and Imperial Guard units in the desperate battles that determined the fate of humanity. The combat records maintained by House Terran chronicle thousands of engagements across hundreds of worlds, documenting a legacy of service that few other imperial institutions can match. House Cadmus represents another pillar of Questor Imperialis' strength, their red and black heraldry marking them as specialists in siege warfare and urban combat. Based on the fortress world of Rasa, House Cadmus developed their expertise through centuries of defending their homeworld against repeated Xenos incursions and traitor uprisings. Their knights incorporate specialized equipment and tactics designed for fighting in confined spaces and against heavily fortified positions, making them invaluable assets when Imperial forces must reduce enemy strongholds or clear urban areas of hostile forces. The house maintains extensive armories of siege equipment and specialized ammunition types that complement their knights' standard weapon systems. The fortress monasteries maintained by House Cadmus serve as training centers where young nobles from across the Questor Imperialis learn advanced siege warfare techniques and urban combat tactics. These facilities incorporate full-scale mock-ups of common fortification types and urban environments, allowing knight pilots to practice complex maneuvers and coordination procedures in realistic settings. The training programs developed by House Cadmus have been adopted by numerous other knight houses, their expertise in siege warfare being recognized as essential knowledge for any noble pilot likely to face fortified enemy positions. House Griffith has earned renown throughout the Imperium for their expertise in rapid deployment operations and deep strike missions, their knights specially configured for maximum mobility and independent operation behind enemy lines. Based on the agri-world of Dutinus, House Griffith developed their tactical specialization in response to the vast distances and scattered settlements that characterize their homeworld's geography. Their knights incorporate enhanced communication systems, extended-range fuel supplies, and modular equipment packages that allow them to operate independently for extended periods without logistical support from conventional Imperial forces. The reconnaissance and intelligence gathering capabilities of House Griffith have proven invaluable in numerous Imperial campaigns, their knights serving as the eyes and ears of larger military formations while conducting harassment operations against enemy supply lines and communication networks. The House maintains specialized training programs that focus on stealth techniques, navigation skills, and independent decision-making, producing pilots capable of operating effectively in isolation while maintaining coordination with distant command structures. Their expertise in these areas has led to frequent requests for House Griffith forces to support Space Marine operations and other elite Imperial military units. House Morton presents a darker aspect of Quaestor Imperialis service, their black and bone heraldry, reflecting their specialization in warfare against heretical and demonic forces. Based on the death world of Kimdaria, House Morton has faced constant threats from chaos incursions and traitor uprisings throughout their history, developing expertise in combating enemies that conventional Imperial forces struggle to engage effectively. Their knights incorporate blessed weapons, sanctified armor plating, and specialized detection equipment designed to identify and eliminate supernatural threats that might otherwise prove invisible to standard sensors. The psychological conditioning undergone by House Morton pilots prepares them for the mental challenges of fighting chaos forces, including resistance to demonic influence and the ability to maintain combat effectiveness even when facing supernatural horrors that would break the morale of ordinary soldiers. The House maintains close relationships with the Ecclesiarchy and Inquisition, their expertise in anti-chaos warfare making them valuable allies in the Imperium's ongoing struggle against heretical forces. The combat records of House Morton document countless battles against demon engines, possessed war machines, and traitor knights, their pilots developing specialized tactics for engaging enemies that combine technological threats with supernatural capabilities. The integration of Imperial Knights into standard Imperial military doctrine required significant modifications to existing tactical frameworks and command structures. The unique capabilities and operational requirements of Knight forces meant that traditional military hierarchies and coordination procedures needed adaptation to accommodate these powerful but independent units. The development of combined arms tactics that effectively utilized knights alongside conventional Imperial forces became a priority for military planners, leading to extensive experimentation and refinement of battlefield coordination procedures. The deployment of knight forces alongside Astra Militarum regiments creates powerful combined arms formations that maximize the strengths of both unit types while compensating for their respective weaknesses. Imperial Guard infantry and armor provide the knights with reconnaissance capabilities, area denial through massed firepower, and protection against infantry-based anti-armor weapons that might threaten the towering war machines. In return, the knights provide devastating heavy weapon support, breakthrough capability against fortified positions, and psychological impact that can shatter enemy morale before conventional forces engage. The coordination procedures developed for Knight Guard cooperation emphasize flexible command structures that allow rapid adaptation to changing battlefield conditions while maintaining overall strategic coherence. Knight pilots retain tactical autonomy within their assigned operational areas, their superior mobility and firepower allowing them to respond to threats and opportunities as they develop. However, this independence operates within broader strategic frameworks established by Imperial Guard commanders, ensuring that Knight actions support overall mission objectives rather than pursuing individual glory or house-specific goals. Space Marine chapters have developed particularly effective working relationships with Imperial Knight houses, the elite nature of both forces creating natural synergies in high-intensity combat operations. The tactical flexibility and rapid deployment capabilities of Space Marines complement the heavy firepower and staying power of Imperial Knights, creating combined formations capable of achieving objectives that neither force could accomplish independently. The mutual respect between these elite warriors often transcends normal Imperial hierarchy considerations, with veteran Knights and Space Marine officers developing professional relationships based on shared combat experience and martial excellence. The coordination between knights and space marines typically operates through liaison officers who possess expertise in both tactical systems and can facilitate communication between the different command structures. These officers, often drawn from Space Marine Tech Marines or Knight House military advisors, ensure that both forces understand each other's capabilities and limitations, while coordinating timing and positioning for maximum tactical effectiveness. The success of these arrangements has led to the development of formal protocols for Knight Astartes cooperation that are now taught in both Space Marine training programs and Knight pilot academies. The strategic deployment of Imperial Knight forces across the galaxy follows carefully planned rotation schedules that ensure adequate coverage of critical sectors, while allowing individual houses to maintain their territorial obligations and training programs. The Adeptus Terra maintains detailed records of Knight House capabilities, current deployment status, and estimated response times for different types of military emergencies. This information allows Imperial commanders to request specific Knight forces based on mission requirements, whether they need siege specialists for reducing fortified positions or rapid response units for countering enemy breakthroughs. The obligation systems that govern Knight House military service operate through formal requisition procedures that balance Imperial needs with House capabilities and existing commitments. When Imperial authorities require Knight support for military operations, they submit detailed requests specifying the type and scale of forces needed, the expected duration of deployment, and the strategic importance of the mission. Knight houses evaluate these requests based on their current operational status, the compatibility of the mission with their tactical specializations, and their existing obligations to other Imperial authorities or allied houses. The participation of Imperial Knights in major crusade operations represents some of the most significant deployments of these forces, as the scale and importance of such campaigns often justify the commitment of entire Knight armies rather than individual lances or companies. The Macharian Crusade saw dozens of Knight houses contribute forces to Lord Solar Macharius's campaigns, their knights spearheading assaults on fortress worlds and providing the heavy firepower necessary to break enemy resistance across hundreds of systems. The coordination challenges involved in managing such massive Knight deployments required unprecedented cooperation between different Imperial institutions and the development of new logistical systems capable of supporting these elite forces across extended campaign periods. The defense of strategically critical worlds often falls primarily to local Knight houses, whose intimate knowledge of planetary geography and long-standing defensive preparations make them ideally suited for this role. These defensive commitments create permanent obligations that take precedence over most other military service requirements, as the loss of key industrial worlds, fortress systems, or strategic waypoints could have catastrophic consequences for entire Imperial sectors. Knight houses assigned to such defensive roles maintain constant readiness states and coordinate closely with planetary defense forces, Space Marine chapters, and Imperial Navy units to ensure comprehensive protection against all potential threats. The fortress worlds defended by Imperial Knights often become centers of military excellence where different Imperial forces train together and develop improved coordination procedures. The permanent presence of Knight forces on these worlds creates opportunities for extended joint training exercises that would be impossible to arrange under normal deployment conditions. These training relationships often develop into lasting military partnerships that enhance the effectiveness of all participating forces while creating informal networks of cooperation that extend across multiple Imperial institutions. The ancient pacts that bind certain Knight houses to the Adeptus Mechanicus represent some of the most enduring and complex political relationships within the Imperium, forged during the tumultuous years of the Great Crusade, when humanity first reunited its scattered colonies under Imperial rule. These alliances emerged from practical necessity as much as philosophical alignment, as the tech adepts of Mars possessed the specialized knowledge and resources essential for maintaining the sophisticated technologies that define knight warfare. The initial contacts between Forge Worlds and Knight houses often occurred during joint military operations, where Mechanicus forces encountered these towering war machines and recognized both their technological sophistication and their critical maintenance requirements. The Treaty of Olympus Mons established the fundamental framework governing relationships between the Adeptus Mechanicus and those knight houses willing to acknowledge Martian authority over their technological heritage. This comprehensive agreement, negotiated in the shadow of the Red Planet's greatest mountain, created mechanisms for technological exchange, military cooperation, and mutual defense that would endure for 10 millennia. The treaty recognized the unique position of knight houses as inheritors of Dark Age technology, while establishing clear obligations for sharing technical knowledge and providing military support to Mechanicus expeditions. Unlike the broader imperial treaties that governed Questor Imperialis houses, these agreements specifically address the technological aspects of knight warfare and the specialized requirements for maintaining ancient war machines. The philosophical foundations underlying Questor Mechanicus allegiances center on shared reverence for ancient technology and the belief that machine spirits represent genuine manifestations of divine intelligence. Where Questor Imperialis houses view their knights primarily as weapons blessed by the Emperor's grace, Questor Mechanicus houses embrace the Mechanicus doctrine that identifies the Omnissiah as the true source of technological knowledge and mechanical life. This theological distinction profoundly influences how these houses approach knight maintenance, pilot training, and combat operations, creating practices and traditions that often differ significantly from their imperial counterparts. The veneration of the Omnissiah within Questor Mechanicus houses manifests through elaborate ritual practices that accompany every aspect of knight operation and maintenance. Pilots undergo extensive indoctrination in Mechanicus theology alongside their technical training, learning to recognize the machine spirits of their knights as sacred entities deserving of worship as well as partnership. These theological teachings emphasize the divine nature of the Throne Mechanicum and the sacred responsibility that pilots bear as intermediaries between human consciousness and mechanical intelligence. The resulting spiritual practices create deeper connections between pilots and their machines while reinforcing loyalty to Mechanicus authority and doctrine. House Raven stands as the most prominent and influential of all Questor Mechanicus houses, their black and red heraldry bearing the sacred cogwheel of Mars alongside their ancient family crests. Based on the knight world of Colossi, House Raven has maintained unbroken alliance with Forge World Metallica for over 8 millennia, their relationship serving as the model for successful Mechanicus knight cooperation throughout the galaxy. The House's extensive knight forces include some of the most technologically advanced war machines outside of Mars itself, their suits incorporating experimental weapon systems, enhanced armor configurations, and sophisticated targeting arrays that represent the cutting edge of Imperial Knight technology. The technical expertise of House Raven extends far beyond simple knight operation to encompass advanced engineering disciplines that rival those of established tech adepts. Their noble bloodlines have intermarried with Mechanicus personnel for generations, creating family trees that blend aristocratic heritage with technical knowledge in ways that strengthen both genetic compatibility with Throne Mechanicum systems and understanding of machine spirit behavior. The resulting hybrid culture produces pilots who approach knight warfare with scientific precision while maintaining the martial traditions that define noble identity. House Raven training facilities incorporate Mechanicus educational techniques alongside traditional knight academies, creating comprehensive programs that produce some of the most skilled pilots in the galaxy. The manufacturing capabilities controlled by House Raven through their Mechanicus alliance allow them to produce knight components and weapon systems that other houses must acquire through complex trade negotiations or ancient stockpiles. Their workshops on Colossi House production lines capable of fabricating everything from basic replacement parts to entirely new knight chassis, though the most sophisticated systems still require direct Mechanicus supervision and blessed materials from Mars itself. This manufacturing capacity makes House Raven a crucial supplier for other Questor Mechanicus houses, while providing them with significant political influence within the broader knight community. House Tyrannes holds the unique distinction of being the first knight house to swear allegiance to Mars, their ancient pacts predating even the Treaty of Olympus Mons by several centuries. Based on the Forge world of Tyrannes itself, this house developed alongside the Mechanicus rather than being incorporated into it, creating relationships of unprecedented intimacy and mutual dependence. The Knights of House Tyrannes incorporate technologies that exist nowhere else in the galaxy, their war machines representing collaborative efforts between the finest noble engineers and the most skilled tech adepts of Mars. The distinctive orange and black livery of House Tyrannes Knights marks them as living testbeds for experimental weapon systems and defensive technologies that may eventually find their way into broader knight production. The symbiotic relationship between House Tyrannes and their Forge world hosts creates unique opportunities for technological advancement that benefit both parties while advancing the broader goals of the Mechanicus. House Tyrannes pilots serve as test subjects for experimental neural interface technologies, their genetic compatibility and extensive experience providing valuable data for improving Throne Mechanicum systems across all knight variants. In return, the House gains access to prototype weapon systems, enhanced armor configurations, and specialized equipment that provides significant advantages in combat operations. The knowledge gained through these collaborative efforts often influences the development of new knight patterns and the refinement of existing designs. The combat doctrine employed by House Tyrannes reflects their close integration with Mechanicus forces and their access to experimental technologies. Their knights often deploy alongside Skitarii cohorts and Tech Guard formations, creating combined arms forces that maximize the strengths of both mechanical infantry and towering war machines. The House has pioneered tactics for urban warfare in industrial environments, their pilots learning to navigate the complex terrain of Forge world cityscapes while coordinating with cybernetic allies who share their reverence for machine intelligence. These specialized skills make House Tyrannes forces particularly valuable when Imperial authorities need to secure or defend critical industrial facilities. House Volker represents the aggressive aspect of Questor Mechanicus philosophy, their red and steel heraldry reflecting their specialization in assault operations and breakthrough tactics. Allied with Forge world Lucius, House Volker has developed expertise in rapid deployment and high-intensity combat that makes them valuable assets for Mechanicus expansion efforts and defensive operations. Their knights incorporate enhanced mobility systems and specialized close combat weapons that allow them to spearhead assaults against heavily fortified positions while maintaining the firepower necessary to eliminate enemy armor and fortifications. The House's tactical doctrine emphasizes speed and aggression, with pilots trained to exploit enemy weaknesses through rapid maneuver and concentrated firepower. The relationship between House Volker and Forge world Lucius exemplifies the military benefits that Mechanicus Alliance can provide to knight houses willing to embrace tech, adept authority, and doctrine. Lucius provides House Volker with access to advanced weapon systems, including experimental plasma weapons, enhanced power fields, and sophisticated targeting systems that significantly enhance their combat effectiveness. In return, House Volker Knights serve as the primary military force for Lucius expeditionary fleets, their mobility and firepower providing essential support for Mechanicus exploration and conquest operations throughout the galaxy. The training programs developed by House Volker emphasize aggressive tactics and rapid decision, making that complement their access to advanced Mechanicus technology. Their pilot academies incorporate extensive simulation training using cogitator systems provided by Lucius Tech Adepts, allowing young nobles to experience complex combat scenarios and develop tactical skills without risking valuable knight suits or pilot lives. These training systems can simulate the performance characteristics of experimental weapon systems and armor configurations, giving House Volker pilots familiarity with cutting-edge technology before it becomes available for actual deployment. House Krast embodies the defensive traditions of Questor Mechanicus philosophy, their yellow and black heraldry marking them as specialists in siege warfare and fortification defense. Allied with Forge World Ryza, House Krast has developed expertise in sustained combat operations and defensive coordination that makes them invaluable for protecting critical Mechanicus installations and industrial complexes. Their knights incorporate enhanced armor systems, extended ammunition supplies, and sophisticated communication arrays that allow them to coordinate defensive operations across vast battlefields while maintaining combat effectiveness during prolonged engagements. The fortress monasteries maintained by House Krast serve as training centers for defensive warfare techniques that benefit knight houses throughout the Questor Mechanicus. These facilities incorporate full-scale fortification mock-ups and siege warfare simulators that allow pilots to practice complex defensive maneuvers and coordination procedures. The defensive expertise developed by House Krast has proven essential during numerous Mechanicus conflicts, their knights anchoring battle lines and coordinating counterattacks that have saved critical Forge worlds from enemy conquest. The house maintains extensive arsenals of defensive equipment and specialized ammunition types that complement their knights' standard weapon systems, while providing enhanced capabilities against specific threat types. The technological benefits provided by Mechanicus Alliance extend far beyond simple access to advanced weapon systems to encompass comprehensive support for knight maintenance, pilot training, and tactical development. Forge worlds possess manufacturing capabilities and technical knowledge that allow them to produce replacement parts, upgrade existing systems, and develop entirely new knight variants that incorporate the latest technological advances. This technical support proves essential for maintaining the sophisticated war machines that define knight warfare, as many knight systems require specialized knowledge and rare materials that exist only within Mechanicus archives and production facilities. The maintenance protocols employed by Questor Mechanicus houses incorporate religious observances and technical procedures that reflect their theological commitment to the Omnissiah while ensuring optimal performance from their knight suits. These procedures go beyond simple mechanical maintenance to include spiritual cleansing rituals, machine spirit appeasement ceremonies, and complex diagnostic procedures that monitor both the physical condition of knight systems and the psychological state of their machine spirit inhabitants. The integration of religious practice with technical maintenance creates comprehensive care regimens that often achieve superior results compared to purely mechanical approaches used by other imperial institutions. The access to archaeotech provided through Mechanicus Alliance represents one of the most significant advantages available to Questor Mechanicus houses, as these ancient technologies often surpass modern imperial capabilities by substantial margins. Forge worlds maintain extensive archives of Dark Age technology patterns and occasionally discover intact archaeotech devices during their explorations of ancient human ruins. When such discoveries occur, allied knight houses often receive priority access to these technologies, allowing them to upgrade their war machines with capabilities that exist nowhere else in the galaxy. The integration of archaeotech systems requires extensive modification of existing knight chassis and sophisticated understanding of ancient technological principles that only the most skilled tech adepts possess. The development of new knight variants through Mechanicus collaboration creates opportunities for technological advancement that benefit the entire Imperial Knight community while strengthening the bonds between specific houses and their Forge World allies. These collaborative projects typically begin with identification of specific tactical requirements that existing knight patterns cannot address effectively, leading to research programs that combine noble house combat experience with Mechanicus technical expertise. The resulting designs often incorporate innovative weapon systems, enhanced defensive capabilities, or improved mobility characteristics that provide significant advantages in specific combat situations. The philosophical differences between Questor Mechanicus and Questor Imperialis houses create distinct cultural identities that influence everything from pilot training and combat doctrine to political relationships and religious practices. Where Questor Imperialis houses emphasize traditional feudal values and personal honor codes derived from ancient Terran chivalric traditions, Questor Mechanicus houses embrace technological advancement and logical analysis as paths to achieving both military effectiveness and spiritual enlightenment. These philosophical differences manifest in practical ways that affect how the two types of houses approach night warfare, maintain their war machines, and interact with other imperial institutions. The theological debates surrounding the relationship between the Emperor and the Omnissiah create ongoing tensions within Knight society that reflect broader conflicts between Imperial and Mechanicus authority. Questor Imperialis houses maintain that the Emperor represents the ultimate source of divine authority, and that all technology serves his will through human agency and divine blessing. Questor Mechanicus houses argue that the Omnissiah represents a distinct aspect of divine intelligence, specifically concerned with mechanical life and technological advancement, making direct alliance with the Mechanicus a more appropriate path for those who depend on sophisticated war machines for their military effectiveness. These theological differences influence practical aspects of Knight operation, including maintenance procedures, pilot training, and combat doctrine in ways that create distinct operational characteristics between the two types of houses. Questor Mechanicus pilots often demonstrate superior technical understanding of their Knight systems and greater ability to adapt to new technologies, while Questor Imperialis pilots may show stronger leadership capabilities and more flexible tactical thinking. The resulting diversity within the Knight community provides the Imperium with a broader range of capabilities, while creating internal tensions that require careful management by Imperial authorities. The rediscovery of the Knight worlds during the Great Crusade represented one of the most significant diplomatic and military achievements of the Emperor's expanding forces, as these encounters brought powerful allies into the Imperial fold through negotiation rather than conquest. When the first expeditionary fleets encountered Knight worlds scattered throughout the galaxy, they found human civilizations that had not only survived the age of strife, but had maintained sophisticated military capabilities and complex feudal societies centered around their towering war machines. The initial contact protocols developed by Imperial commanders recognized that these worlds possessed military forces capable of inflicting severe casualties on even Space Marine legions, making diplomatic approaches far more practical than military conquest. The negotiations that brought Knight worlds into Imperial compliance required unprecedented flexibility from Imperial diplomatic corps, as each world possessed unique political structures, cultural traditions, and territorial arrangements that defied standard compliance templates. Imperial representatives found themselves dealing with feudal monarchies whose political legitimacy derived from ancient bloodlines and martial prowess, rather than administrative efficiency or ideological alignment with Imperial doctrine. The Knight houses evaluated Imperial overtures based on their own concepts of honor, military effectiveness, and the potential benefits of alliance rather than simple submission to superior force. These negotiations often took months or years to complete, as both sides carefully assessed the implications of formal alliance while establishing the terms under which cooperation would operate. The role of the Mechanicum in facilitating Knight world compliance proved absolutely crucial, as the tech adepts possessed both the technical knowledge necessary to understand Knight technology and the diplomatic credibility to negotiate as equals rather than conquerors. When Mechanicum representatives examined Knight suits and maintenance facilities, they immediately recognized the sophisticated Dark Age technology that formed the foundation of Knight warfare. This technical expertise allowed them to offer genuine value to Knight houses in the form of improved maintenance procedures, replacement parts for damaged systems, and access to rare materials needed for Knight operation. The mutual respect that developed between tech adepts and Knight engineers created bonds of professional cooperation that facilitated broader political agreements between their respective institutions. The formal ceremonies that marked knight world integration into the Imperium incorporated elements from both imperial protocol and traditional knight customs, creating hybrid rituals that satisfied the requirements of both political systems while respecting the cultural sensitivities of the noble houses. These ceremonies typically featured the presentation of knight banners alongside imperial eagles, oaths of allegiance spoken in both High Gothic and local dialects, and demonstrations of knight combat capabilities that impressed imperial observers while allowing noble pilots to display their martial prowess. The psychological impact of these ceremonies extended far beyond their immediate participants, as they established precedents for imperial knight cooperation that would influence relationships between these institutions for millennia to come. House Terran's integration into the Imperium exemplified the diplomatic approach that proved most successful with knight worlds, as imperial negotiators recognized the house's ancient heritage and military capabilities, while offering concrete benefits in exchange for alliance. The initial contact between House Terran and the 203rd Expeditionary Fleet occurred when both forces encountered a massive orc invasion threatening the Volturus system. The spontaneous cooperation that emerged during this crisis demonstrated the potential for effective Imperial Knight military coordination, while allowing both sides to evaluate each other's capabilities and reliability under combat conditions. The formal alliance negotiations that followed built upon this foundation of mutual respect and proven effectiveness, creating agreements that balanced imperial authority with knight autonomy in ways that satisfied both parties. The military contributions of knight houses to Great Crusade campaigns proved invaluable across a wide range of operational scenarios, from planetary conquest and siege warfare to deep space exploration and Xenos extermination campaigns. The unique capabilities of Imperial Knights filled crucial gaps in expeditionary fleet force structures, providing heavy assault capabilities that complemented Space Marine tactical flexibility and Imperial Army numerical strength. Knight forces could spearhead assaults against heavily fortified positions that would require extensive siege preparations using conventional forces, while their mobility allowed rapid exploitation of breakthrough opportunities that might otherwise be lost due to the time required to bring up heavy support weapons. The conquest of Forge World Lucius demonstrated the decisive impact that Knight forces could provide during critical Great Crusade operations, as House Vulkar's assault capabilities proved essential for breaking through the sophisticated defenses that protected this crucial industrial center. The siege had dragged on for months as Imperial forces struggled to penetrate the massive fortress complexes and underground manufacturing facilities that characterized this ancient Mechanicum stronghold. The arrival of House Vulkar Knights transformed the tactical situation, as their ability to breach fortified positions and engage enemy war machines in close combat allowed Imperial forces to establish footholds within the fortress complexes that had previously proven impregnable. The Knights' thermal weapons proved particularly effective against the heavy blast doors and armored bulkheads that protected critical facilities, while their mobility allowed them to exploit breaches and advance through complex industrial terrain that would have channeled conventional assault forces into prepared killing zones. The pacification of rebellious human colonies throughout the Great Crusade often required the specific combination of overwhelming firepower and precise application of force that Imperial Knights provided more effectively than other Imperial military assets. Unlike Space Marine forces, which might be perceived as inhuman by colonial populations, or Imperial Army units, which might lack the firepower to quickly suppress resistance, Knight forces represented clearly human warriors whose martial prowess commanded respect, while their restraint demonstrated Imperial benevolence toward compliant populations. The psychological impact of Knight forces during compliance operations often proved as important as their military capabilities, as the sight of these towering war machines convinced many colonial leaders that resistance would be futile, while submission might preserve their existing social structures and territorial arrangements. The relationship between knight houses and Space Marine legions developed along lines of mutual respect between elite warrior orders that shared common values of martial excellence, personal honor, and dedication to the Emperor's vision for humanity. Unlike the hierarchical relationships that characterized most imperial military cooperation, Knight Astartes partnerships operated through protocols that recognized both forces as independent military entities with their own command structures, tactical doctrines, and operational priorities. Space Marine commanders learned to coordinate with Knight forces rather than command them, while Knight pilots developed appreciation for Astartes' tactical expertise and strategic thinking that complemented their own focus on individual combat prowess and chivalric traditions. The Iron Hands Legion established particularly close working relationships with several Questor Mechanicus houses, as their shared reverence for mechanical perfection and technological advancement created natural bonds of cooperation and mutual understanding. Ferrus Manus himself participated in joint operations with House Raven Knights during the compliance of several Forge Worlds, his personal involvement demonstrating the importance that Primarchs placed on maintaining positive relationships with these powerful allies. The tactical coordination that developed during these campaigns created operational procedures that maximized the effectiveness of both Iron Hands and Knight forces, while establishing communication protocols that allowed rapid coordination of complex multi-unit operations. The Imperial Fists Legion developed comprehensive doctrines for Knight Astartes cooperation in siege warfare, recognizing that the combination of Knight firepower and Space Marine tactical flexibility provided optimal capabilities for reducing fortified positions while minimizing casualties among Imperial forces. Rogel Dorn's systematic approach to military planning incorporated Knight capabilities into siege calculations from the earliest planning stages, ensuring that these powerful allies received appropriate support while their unique abilities were utilized to maximum advantage. The siege protocols developed by the Imperial Fists became standard procedures throughout the Great Crusade, influencing how other legions approached cooperation with Knight forces in similar operational scenarios. The impact of the Great Crusade on Knight world society extended far beyond simple military alliance to encompass fundamental changes in technology, culture, and territorial organization that transformed these feudal societies while preserving their essential characteristics. The technological exchange that accompanied imperial integration provided Knight houses with access to improved manufacturing techniques, enhanced communication systems, and sophisticated logistical capabilities that significantly expanded their military effectiveness. Forge World partnerships allowed Knight houses to upgrade their existing war machines while gaining access to new weapon systems and defensive technologies that incorporated the latest Imperial innovations with traditional Knight design principles. The cultural integration that occurred during the Great Crusade created hybrid societies that blended traditional Knight feudalism with Imperial administrative practices and religious observances. Knight houses adopted Imperial calendar systems, legal frameworks, and ceremonial protocols while maintaining their ancient traditions of chivalric behavior, hereditary governance, and machine spirit veneration. The resulting cultural synthesis created societies that remained recognizably Knight in character while functioning effectively within the broader Imperial system. Religious practices evolved to incorporate Imperial saints and Emperor worship alongside traditional Knight spiritual observances, creating theological frameworks that satisfied both Imperial religious authorities and traditional Knight spiritual needs. The expansion of Knight house territories during the Great Crusade provided opportunities for ambitious noble families to establish new fiefdoms and extend their influence beyond their original homeworlds. Many Knight houses received grants of newly conquered worlds as rewards for their military service, allowing them to establish cadet branches and expand their territorial holdings throughout Imperial space. These territorial expansions required careful negotiation of feudal obligations and inheritance rights. As traditional knight, law needed adaptation to accommodate multi-world domains and complex inter-system political relationships. The administrative challenges created by these expanded territories led to the development of new governmental structures that combined traditional feudal hierarchy with imperial bureaucratic efficiency. The establishment of knight training facilities on multiple worlds allowed noble houses to expand their pilot recruitment programs while maintaining the genetic and cultural requirements that defined knight society. These academies incorporated imperial educational standards with traditional knight training methods, producing graduates who possessed both the technical skills necessary for effective knight operation and the cultural knowledge required for integration into noble society. The expansion of training capacity allowed knight houses to field larger forces while maintaining the quality standards that ensured effective neural bonding and combat performance. The logistical networks that developed to support knight forces during Great Crusade operations created infrastructure that would prove essential for the continued effectiveness of these units throughout imperial history. The specialized maintenance facilities, supply chains, and communication systems required to keep knight forces operational across galactic distances necessitated unprecedented cooperation between different imperial institutions. The Mechanicum provided technical expertise and specialized equipment, while Imperial Army logistical units handled transportation and basic supply requirements. The coordination procedures developed during this period established precedents for knight force deployment that would influence imperial military planning for millennia to come. The joint operations conducted during the Great Crusade created tactical innovations that enhanced the effectiveness of all participating forces while establishing operational procedures that became standard practice throughout the imperial military. Knight forces learned to coordinate with Space Marine rapid deployment capabilities, Imperial Army massed firepower, and Mechanicum technical support in ways that maximized the strengths of each force type while compensating for their respective limitations. The tactical flexibility that emerged from these cooperative relationships allowed Imperial commanders to adapt their strategies to local conditions while maintaining the operational tempo necessary for successful Great Crusade campaigns. The outbreak of the Horus Heresy shattered the unity that had bound the Knight worlds together during the Great Crusade, forcing ancient houses to choose between competing loyalties that would define their fate for millennia to come. When word reached the scattered Knight worlds that the Warmaster himself had turned against the Emperor, the initial reaction among most noble houses was disbelief, followed by desperate attempts to verify the impossible reports filtering through astropathic communications and Mechanicus data networks. The feudal structure of Knight society, with its emphasis on personal oaths and hereditary obligations, created complex webs of loyalty that could not easily accommodate the binary choice between Emperor and Warmaster that the Civil War demanded. The fragmentation of Knight House loyalties followed patterns that reflected both political pragmatism and deeply held philosophical convictions about the nature of imperial authority and the proper relationship between human civilization and technological advancement. Houses with strong connections to the Adeptus Mechanicus found themselves torn between their oaths to the Golden Throne and their technical dependence on forge worlds that had declared for Horus, while Questor Imperialis houses faced pressure from Space Marine legions and Imperial Army commanders whose own loyalties had become suspect. The ancient bonds of marriage alliance and territorial agreement that had provided stability during the Great Crusade now became sources of conflict, as related houses found themselves on opposite sides of the galactic civil war. House Divine represented one of the most tragic examples of noble corruption during the heresy, their fall from honored defenders of humanity to willing servants of chaos, demonstrating how even the most ancient and respected bloodlines could succumb to the temptations of dark powers. Based on the Knight world of Malech, House Divine had served with distinction throughout the Great Crusade, their knights participating in numerous compliance actions and earning commendations from multiple Space Marine legions for their courage and tactical skill. The house's extensive genealogical records trace their lineage back to the earliest days of human expansion, while their Throne Mechanicum systems incorporated some of the most sophisticated neural interface technology outside of Mars itself. The corruption of House Divine began subtly, manifesting first as minor deviations from traditional knight protocols and gradually escalating into open embrace of heretical practices that violated every principle of the Codex Chivalric. The House's pilots reported experiencing unusual sensations during neural bonding sessions, describing whispered voices that seemed to emanate from their knights' machine spirits and offering knowledge of forbidden weapon modifications and combat techniques. These manifestations initially appeared beneficial, as House Divine Knights began demonstrating enhanced combat performance and tactical capabilities that exceeded their previous standards. The House's leadership interpreted these developments as signs of divine favor, failing to recognize the insidious influence of chaos corruption that was gradually subverting their war machines and their pilots' minds. The transformation of House Divine's knights reflected the physical corruption that accompanied their spiritual fall, as their once proud war machines began exhibiting grotesque modifications that combined advanced technology with organic growths and demonic influences. Weapon systems sprouted additional barrels that fired ammunition infused with warp energies, while armor plating developed sensory organs and muscular tissue that enhanced the knights' responsiveness to their pilots' commands. The Throne Mechanicum systems underwent the most disturbing changes, their neural interfaces extending tendrils directly into their pilots' nervous systems, while machine spirits evolved into entities that demanded worship and sacrifice in exchange for their continued cooperation. The tactical capabilities of corrupted House Divine Knights proved devastatingly effective against Imperial forces unprepared for enemies that combined advanced technology with demonic enhancement. Their weapons could penetrate armor that should have provided protection against conventional knight armaments, while their enhanced sensory systems allowed them to detect and engage targets at ranges that exceeded standard knight operational parameters. The psychological impact of facing these corrupted war machines proved as damaging as their physical capabilities, as Imperial soldiers found themselves confronting enemies that violated fundamental assumptions about the nature of technology and the boundaries between machine and demon. House Mechanicus followed a different path to corruption, their fall driven by ambition and resentment rather than gradual spiritual contamination. Based on the industrial world of Zana II, House Mechanicus had chafed under Imperial authority throughout the Great Crusade, their leaders believing that their house's technological expertise and military capabilities deserved greater recognition and autonomy than Imperial administrators were willing to grant. The house maintained extensive manufacturing facilities that produced knight components and weapon systems for other noble houses, creating economic relationships that provided significant political influence while generating enormous wealth for the ruling bloodlines. The decision of House Mechanicus to join Horus's rebellion stemmed from calculated assessment of potential benefits rather than corruption-induced madness, as the House's leadership recognized that a successful rebellion would eliminate the imperial bureaucracy that constrained their territorial ambitions and commercial activities. The War Master's promises of increased autonomy and expanded territorial grants appealed to noble families who had grown frustrated with imperial regulations that limited their ability to exploit the full potential of their industrial capabilities. The House's extensive technical knowledge made them valuable allies for the traitor cause, as their expertise in knight maintenance and modification could provide significant advantages to other rebellious houses, while their manufacturing capacity could support extended military campaigns. The military contributions of House Mechanicus to the traitor cause extended beyond simple knight deployment to encompass comprehensive technical support for other rebellious forces. Their workshops produced modified weapon systems that incorporated forbidden technologies and enhanced performance characteristics, while their technical specialists provided maintenance services that kept Traitor Knight forces operational throughout extended campaigns. The house's industrial facilities became centers of innovation where traditional knight designs were modified with experimental weapon systems, enhanced armor configurations, and communication arrays that provided tactical advantages over loyalist forces equipped with standard Imperial technology. The corruption that eventually overtook House Mechanicus manifested differently from the spiritual contamination that affected House Divine, taking the form of technological obsession that gradually eroded the human elements of knight piloting in favor of pure mechanical efficiency. House Mechanicus pilots began undergoing surgical modifications that enhanced their neural compatibility with their knights, while removing emotional and psychological elements that the house's leadership viewed as impediments to optimal performance. These procedures created pilots who demonstrated superior technical skills and tactical coordination while losing the human creativity and moral judgment that traditionally defined noble warfare. The Schism of Mars represented the most significant single event affecting Knight House loyalties during the Horus Heresy, as the civil war that erupted within the Adeptus Mechanicus forced every Questor Mechanicus house to choose between competing factions that claimed legitimate authority over their ancient alliance obligations. When Fabricator General Kelber had declared his support for Horus and began purging loyalist tech adepts from positions of authority, the shock waves reverberated throughout every Forge world and their allied knight houses. The technical dependence that had made Mechanicus Alliance so valuable during peacetime now became a source of vulnerability, as houses found themselves cut off from essential maintenance support and spare parts supplies. The response of individual knight houses to the Martian Civil War varied according to their specific relationships with particular Forge worlds and their assessment of which faction represented legitimate Mechanicus authority. Houses with strong personal relationships with loyalist tech adepts often remained faithful to the Emperor despite pressure from their official Forge world allies, while those whose primary connections were with traitor elements found themselves drawn into rebellion regardless of their initial loyalties. The complexity of these relationships created situations where individual knights within the same house might find themselves on opposite sides of the conflict, leading to internal civil wars that mirrored the broader galactic struggle. House Raven faced particularly difficult choices during the Schism of Mars, as their ancient alliance with Forge World Metallica placed them in direct conflict with their fundamental loyalty to the Emperor when significant elements of the Forge World's leadership declared for Horus. The House's response demonstrated the strength of their imperial convictions, as they chose to honor their oaths to the Golden Throne despite the enormous practical difficulties this decision created for maintaining their knight forces. The break with Metallica cost House Raven access to advanced weapon systems and technical support that had provided significant advantages during the Great Crusade, forcing them to rely on their own technical expertise and stockpiled supplies while seeking alternative sources of maintenance support from loyalist Mechanicus elements. The Battle of Malech showcased the devastating effectiveness of traitor knight forces, while demonstrating the tragic consequences of noble corruption for the worlds and populations they had once protected. When Horus launched his assault on this strategically crucial world, the traitor forces included significant numbers of corrupted knights from Houses Divine and Mechanicus, their enhanced capabilities proving decisive in breaking through the formidable defenses that protected the planet's mysterious secrets. The Loyalist defenders, including elements from several faithful knight houses, found themselves outmatched by enemies who combined traditional knight capabilities with demonic enhancements and forbidden technologies that violated every principle of honorable warfare. The urban warfare that characterized much of the Malech campaign highlighted the advantages that corrupted knights possessed over their loyalist counterparts, as their enhanced sensory systems and modified weapon configurations proved ideally suited for combat in the complex industrial terrain that dominated the planet's major population centers. The traitor knights could navigate through damaged buildings and underground tunnel systems with unprecedented agility, while their corrupted weapon systems proved capable of penetrating fortifications that should have provided protection against conventional knight armaments. The psychological impact of these enhanced capabilities proved as significant as their tactical effectiveness, as loyalist forces found their morale undermined by facing enemies that seemed to violate fundamental laws of physics and technology. The participation of knight forces in the Siege of Terra represented the culmination of their involvement in the Horus Heresy, as both loyalist and traitor houses committed their most powerful war machines to the final confrontation that would determine the fate of humanity. The loyalist knight houses that had remained faithful throughout the Civil War found themselves defending not only the imperial palace, but also the fundamental principles of honor and duty that defined noble identity. The traitor knights that participated in the siege had become something entirely different from their origins, their corruption transforming them into weapons of pure destruction that served powers antithetical to human civilization. House Terran's defense of the imperial palace during the siege demonstrated the heights of noble heroism, while showcasing the tactical capabilities that made Imperial Knights such valuable assets in urban warfare. Their knights took positions throughout the palace complex, using their mobility and firepower to respond rapidly to breakthrough attempts, while coordinating with Space Marine and Imperial Guard units in defensive operations that required unprecedented cooperation between different military forces. The House's ancient war machines, some dating back to the Dark Age of technology, proved their worth in battles that tested every system and capability they possessed, while their pilots demonstrated the courage and tactical skill that had made their bloodline legendary throughout the galaxy. The traitor knights that assaulted the Imperial Palace represented the ultimate corruption of noble ideals. Their war machines transformed into demon engines that combined technological sophistication with supernatural malevolence. These corrupted war machines demonstrated capabilities that exceeded anything seen during the earlier phases of the heresy, their weapons firing ammunition infused with warp energies, while their armor plating incorporated living tissue and demonic essence that provided protection against both physical and psychic attacks. The pilots of these machines had long since ceased to be human in any meaningful sense, their consciousness subsumed into the demonic entities that now inhabited their knights' corrupted systems. The aftermath of the Horus Heresy created enormous challenges for the surviving knight houses, as imperial authorities struggled to determine which houses could be trusted and what measures would be necessary to prevent future betrayals. The traditional autonomy that knight houses had enjoyed during the Great Crusade came under scrutiny as imperial administrators recognized that this independence had facilitated the corruption and rebellion that had cost the Imperium so dearly during the Civil War. The establishment of new oversight mechanisms and loyalty verification procedures required careful balance between security concerns and the practical need to maintain knight house cooperation in defending the weakened Imperium against external threats. The purges that followed the heresy's end affected knight houses differently depending on their actions during the Civil War and their perceived reliability by imperial authorities. Houses that had remained unquestionably loyal throughout the conflict found their positions strengthened as they received territorial grants and resource allocations that had previously belonged to traitor houses, while those whose loyalty had been questionable faced investigation and potential dissolution. The process of determining guilt and innocence proved complex, as many houses had been forced to make difficult choices based on incomplete information and conflicting obligations that made simple moral judgments inappropriate. The redemption quests undertaken by knight houses seeking to restore their honor after questionable actions during the heresy became legendary examples of noble determination to uphold chivalric ideals despite enormous personal cost. These voluntary missions typically involved accepting the most dangerous assignments available, while foregoing normal logistical support and reinforcement, forcing the participating knights to prove their loyalty through actions rather than words. The success of these redemption campaigns often required years or decades of faithful service, with entire generations of noble families dedicating their lives to restoring their house's reputation through exemplary conduct and heroic sacrifice. The establishment of new oath ceremonies and loyalty verification procedures reflected imperial recognition that traditional feudal bonds had proven insufficient to prevent noble corruption during the heresy. These enhanced protocols incorporated elements from both Imperial and Mechanicus traditions, while adding new requirements for regular loyalty demonstrations and behavioral monitoring that would have been considered intrusive violations of noble autonomy before the Civil War. The psychological impact of these new requirements created ongoing tensions between knight houses and imperial authorities, as traditional concepts of honor and independence conflicted with practical security necessities that the heresy had made unavoidable. The legacy of divided loyalties from the Horus heresy cast long shadows across knight society, but perhaps no development proved more catastrophic than the emergence of chaos knight houses, noble bloodlines whose corruption ran so deep that redemption became impossible. Unlike the tragic falls of houses Divine and Malinax during the Civil War, these corrupted lineages embraced their damnation completely, transforming from protectors of humanity into willing servants of the ruinous powers. The process of corruption that created these fallen houses operated through multiple vectors, each more insidious than simple battlefield defeat or political miscalculation. The Throne Mechanicum systems that formed the heart of every knight suit provided the primary pathway through which chaos taint could spread throughout entire bloodlines. The neural interface technology that created such intimate connections between pilot and machine spirit also made both vulnerable to corruption that could propagate through the quantum-entangled systems that linked consciousness to mechanical intelligence. When chaos influence penetrated these sacred systems, it did not simply corrupt individual pilots, but embedded itself within the very architecture of the Throne Mechanicum, creating persistent contamination that would affect every subsequent user. The machine's spirits themselves became vectors for corruption, their artificial intelligence twisted into malevolent entities that actively sought to corrupt their human partners rather than serve them. The hereditary nature of knight piloting meant that corruption within a Throne Mechanicum could affect multiple generations of a noble bloodline, as the genetic compatibility that allowed successful neural bonding also made family members particularly susceptible to the specific forms of taint that had infected their ancestral war machines. Children who inherited corrupted knights found themselves exposed to malevolent influences from their first neural connections, their developing minds shaped by entities that whispered promises of power and knowledge, while gradually eroding their human identity and moral framework. The subtle nature of this corruption often prevented detection until the transformation had progressed beyond any possibility of reversal. The physical manifestations of Throne Mechanicum corruption reflected the specific chaos powers that had claimed particular knight houses, with each ruinous power leaving distinctive marks on both machine and pilot. Khorne's influence transformed knights into engines of pure aggression, their weapon systems sprouting additional barrels and cutting edges, while their armor plating developed spikes and skull motifs that reflected their patron's bloodthirsty nature. The pilots of these corrupted machines experienced constant urges toward violence and conquest, their personalities gradually subsumed by an overwhelming need to spill blood and claim skulls for the blood god's throne. Tzeentch's corruption manifested through bizarre technological modifications that defied rational understanding, as knight systems underwent impossible transformations that incorporated crystalline growths, shifting geometric patterns, and weapon configurations that changed their fundamental nature between battles. The machine spirits of Tzeentchian knights became repositories of forbidden knowledge and arcane secrets, offering their pilots insights into the nature of reality and technology that came at the cost of their sanity and humanity. These corrupted pilots often developed obsessions with complex schemes and manipulations that served their patrons' love of change and mutation. Nurgle's influence created perhaps the most disturbing corruption among knight houses, as his gifts of decay and disease transformed proud war machines into shambling plague engines that spread contagion wherever they traveled. The organic components that Nurgle's corruption introduced into knight systems created grotesque hybrid entities that combined mechanical precision with biological resilience, their weapons systems modified to deliver plagues and toxins rather than conventional munitions. The pilots of these corrupted knights became living repositories of disease, their bodies hosting countless pathogens, while their minds embraced the comfort and acceptance that Nurgle offered to those who ceased struggling against entropy and decay. Slaanesh's corruption proved perhaps the most seductive, as the Prince of Pleasure offered knight pilots enhanced sensory experiences and perfect synchronization with their machine spirits that exceeded anything possible through conventional neural bonding. The corrupted knights that served Slaanesh incorporated sonic weapons, psychotropic gas dispensers, and sensory enhancement systems that could overwhelm enemy forces with pleasure or pain depending on the pilot's whims. The pilots themselves became addicted to the intense sensations that their enhanced neural connections provided, their pursuit of ever greater experiences leading them to commit increasingly depraved acts in service to their patron. House Lucaris exemplified the tragedy of noble corruption through their fall to Slaanesh during the Dark Millennia following the heresy. Originally based on the Night World of Perdition, House Lucaris had maintained a proud tradition of artistic achievement alongside their martial prowess, their knights decorated with elaborate heraldry, and their pilots trained in music, poetry, and other cultural pursuits that distinguished them from more purely military noble houses. The house's emphasis on aesthetic perfection and sensory refinement made them particularly vulnerable to Slaanesh's influence when chaos cults began operating within their territories during the 32nd millennium. The corruption of House Lucaris began through their patronage of artists and craftsmen who had been secretly influenced by Slaaneshi cults, their works incorporating subtle corrupting influences that gradually affected the noble families who commissioned and displayed them. The house's Throne Mechanicum systems began incorporating decorative elements that enhanced the sensory feedback experienced during neural bonding, initially appearing as beneficial modifications that improved pilot performance and satisfaction. The enhanced sensations proved addictive, leading pilots to spend increasing amounts of time connected to their knights while seeking ever greater levels of stimulation and pleasure. The transformation of House Lucaris knights reflected their patrons' obsessions with perfection and excess, as their war machines underwent modifications that emphasized aesthetic beauty alongside combat effectiveness. Weapon systems were reshaped into artistic masterpieces that delivered death with elegant precision, while armor plating incorporated precious metals and gemstones that created dazzling visual displays during combat. The knights' movement patterns became fluid and graceful, their pilots performing elaborate combat dances that combined martial effectiveness with artistic expression in ways that mesmerized both allies and enemies. The tactical doctrine employed by corrupted House Lucaris emphasized psychological warfare and sensory manipulation over conventional firepower, their knights equipped with sonic weapons that could induce euphoria or agony in enemy forces, while psychotropic gas dispensers created battlefield conditions that favored their enhanced sensory capabilities. Their pilots developed supernatural awareness of enemy emotions and motivations, allowing them to exploit psychological weaknesses with devastating effectiveness, while their own enhanced reflexes and sensory processing provided significant advantages in close combat situations. House Chimer represented a different path to corruption, their fall to Khorne driven by a gradual escalation of violence and aggression that transformed their traditional martial pride into bloodthirsty savagery. Based on the death world of Crucible, House Chimer had always emphasized combat prowess and personal courage, their knights participating in gladiatorial contests and honor duels that tested both pilot skill and machine performance. The constant warfare that characterized their homeworld created a culture that celebrated violence and conquest, making the house particularly susceptible to Khorne's influence when warp storms began affecting their system during the 35th millennium. The corruption of House Khmer manifested through their Throne Mechanicum systems, developing an insatiable hunger for combat and bloodshed that gradually overwhelmed their pilots' rational decision-making processes. The machine spirits of their knights began demanding increasingly violent and destructive actions, rewarding pilots who embraced aggression while punishing those who showed restraint or mercy. The neural bonding process became a struggle for dominance between human consciousness and mechanical bloodlust, with the machine spirits eventually achieving complete control over pilots who had been reduced to mere instruments of their knights' violent impulses. The physical transformation of House Khmer knights reflected their patrons' obsession with warfare and destruction, as their weapon systems underwent modifications that maximized their capacity for carnage and brutality. Close combat weapons sprouted additional cutting edges and crushing surfaces, while ranged weapons were modified to fire ammunition designed to cause maximum pain and suffering rather than clean kills. The knights' armor plating developed skull motifs and brass fittings that proclaimed their allegiance to the blood god, while their movement patterns became increasingly aggressive and predatory. The tactical approach employed by corrupted House Khmer abandoned all pretense of strategic thinking in favor of direct assault and close combat engagement, their knights charging into enemy formations with reckless abandon while seeking personal combat with the most dangerous opponents available. Their pilots lost all capacity for cooperation and coordination, each knight operating as an independent berserker whose only goal was accumulating kills and claiming trophies from fallen enemies. The psychological impact of these frenzied assaults often proved as devastating as their physical effects, as enemy forces found themselves facing opponents who seemed immune to fear or pain while demonstrating supernatural resilience and combat effectiveness. House Morbidia's fall to Nurgle demonstrated how corruption could spread through entire knight houses when environmental factors created conditions favorable to the plague god's influence. Based on the industrial world of Miasmata, House Morbidia had long struggled with pollution and environmental degradation caused by extensive manufacturing operations that supported their knight maintenance facilities and weapon production capabilities. The toxic atmosphere and contaminated water supplies that characterized their homeworld created persistent health problems among the population, making them receptive to Nurgle's promises of relief from suffering and acceptance of their deteriorating conditions. The corruption of House Morbidia began when plague outbreaks swept through their territories during the 37th millennium, killing thousands while creating conditions of despair and hopelessness that Nurgle's influence could exploit. The House's Throne Mechanicum systems became infected with supernatural diseases that enhanced their pilots' resilience and endurance, while gradually transforming their physical forms into repositories of contagion and decay. The machine spirits of their knights developed symbiotic relationships with the diseases that infected their systems, creating hybrid entities that combined mechanical precision with biological adaptability. The transformation of House Morbidia knights created walking plague engines that spread contagion wherever they traveled, their weapon systems modified to deliver toxic clouds and diseased ammunition that could devastate entire enemy formations through biological warfare. The knights' armor plating incorporated living tissue that could regenerate damage while hosting countless pathogens, making them incredibly difficult to destroy through conventional means. Their pilots embraced their transformed state, finding comfort in Nurgle's acceptance and the sense of belonging that came from joining his eternal cycle of decay and renewal. The military threat posed by Chaos Knight houses to loyal Imperial forces extended far beyond their individual combat capabilities to encompass their role in supporting larger Chaos operations throughout the galaxy. Fallen houses often served as the heavy assault elements for Chaos Space Marine warbands, their knights providing the firepower and breakthrough capability necessary for successful attacks against Imperial strongholds and fortified positions. The combination of Chaos Knight mobility and firepower with Traitor Marine tactical expertise created formidable military forces that could challenge even well-prepared Imperial defenses. The demon engines that many Chaos Knights eventually became represented the ultimate fusion of mechanical technology with supernatural malevolence, creating entities that possessed capabilities exceeding those of conventional war machines, while serving as focal points for demonic manifestations. These corrupted knights could channel warp energies through their weapon systems, create localized reality distortions that affected enemy forces, and serve as anchors for demonic incursions that could transform entire battlefields into extensions of the warp itself. The pilots of these demon engines had long since ceased to exist as independent entities, their consciousness absorbed into the demonic intelligences that now controlled their former war machines. The ongoing threat that Chaos Knight houses posed to loyal Knight worlds created persistent security concerns for imperial authorities and noble houses alike, as the corrupted bloodlines actively sought to spread their taint to their former allies and rivals. Chaos Knights often returned to their original homeworlds, leading invasion forces or conducting raids designed to corrupt additional noble houses, while claiming ancient grudges and territorial disputes as justification for their attacks. The intimate knowledge that fallen houses possessed of loyal Knight defenses and tactical doctrines made them particularly dangerous enemies, as they could exploit weaknesses and coordinate attacks with devastating effectiveness. The eternal war between loyal and fallen Knight houses created some of the most bitter and personal conflicts within the broader struggle between the Imperium and Chaos, as former allies and family members found themselves facing each other across battlefields, where honor and corruption clashed in combat that transcended mere military objectives. These confrontations often took on the character of knightly duels writ large, with individual knights seeking personal combat with their corrupted counterparts, while entire houses committed their honor and survival to proving their loyalty through victory over their fallen kin. The psychological impact of these battles affected all participants, as loyal knights faced the constant reminder of how easily noble virtue could be corrupted, while Chaos Knights sought to prove the superiority of their patron powers through defeating those who had rejected the gifts of the dark gods. The detection and elimination of Chaos Knight houses became one of the most critical challenges facing imperial authorities in the millennia following the Horus Heresy, as the corrupted bloodlines proved far more dangerous and persistent than conventional traitor forces. Unlike Chaos Space Marines or renegade Imperial Guard units, fallen Knight houses retained their sophisticated technology and feudal organizational structures, while gaining supernatural enhancements that made them formidable opponents for even the most elite Imperial forces. The Ordo Malleus developed specialized protocols for identifying and responding to Chaos Knight threats, recognizing that these corrupted war machines required fundamentally different tactical approaches compared to conventional demon engines or possessed vehicles. The current state of Knight worlds in the 41st millennium reflects the accumulated damage of 10,000 years of constant warfare, technological decline, and the gradual erosion of the infrastructure that once supported these feudal societies during their golden age. The Great Rift's emergence has fundamentally altered the strategic situation facing Knight houses across the galaxy, creating new threats while severing ancient supply lines and communication networks that many houses had relied upon for millennia. The warp storms that accompanied Cicatrix Maledictum's formation disrupted astropathic communications between Knight worlds and their Imperial allies, forcing many houses to operate in complete isolation while facing unprecedented challenges to their survival and military effectiveness. The Knight worlds located within the Imperium Nihilus found themselves cut off from all external support when the Great Rift tore across the galaxy, transforming proud feudal societies into isolated fortress worlds struggling to maintain their technological base while defending against constant threats. House Terran's holdings on Voltaurus experienced devastating warp storms that damaged critical infrastructure and corrupted several of their ancient Throne Mechanicum systems, forcing the house to implement emergency protocols that had not been used since the Age of Strife. Their sacristans worked desperately to maintain operational knights, while rationing irreplaceable components and attempting to jury-rig replacement parts, using locally available materials that fell far short of the sophisticated alloys and rare elements their war machines required. The isolation experienced by knight houses in the Dark Imperium created opportunities for innovation and self-reliance that had not existed for millennia, as houses were forced to develop new manufacturing techniques and maintenance procedures without access to Forge World expertise or Imperial supply networks. House Cadmus on Rasa established underground workshops that could produce basic knight components using locally mined materials, though the quality of these improvised parts remained significantly inferior to proper Imperial manufacture. Their tech adepts experimented with alternative power sources and weapon configurations that could utilize available resources while maintaining some degree of combat effectiveness against the increasing threats that surrounded their isolated world. The declining populations that characterize many knight worlds in the current era represent one of the most serious long-term threats to the survival of noble houses, as the genetic requirements for knight piloting create recruitment challenges that cannot be solved through simple immigration or population growth initiatives. House Griffith on Dutinus has seen their pilot-capable bloodlines reduced to fewer than 200 individuals across all family branches, forcing them to implement desperate measures, including genetic screening programs and arranged marriages with distant relatives whose compatibility ratings fall below traditional standards. The House's leadership recognizes that their current recruitment pool may be insufficient to maintain their knight forces beyond the next few generations, creating existential pressures that influence every strategic decision they make. The technological challenges facing knight houses in the 41st millennium extend far beyond simple maintenance and repair to encompass the gradual loss of knowledge and manufacturing capability that threatens to reduce these sophisticated war machines to inoperable relics within the next few centuries. The standard template construct databases that once provided comprehensive technical documentation for knight systems have become increasingly corrupted over the millennia, with critical manufacturing instructions becoming garbled or completely inaccessible. House Morton's sacristans maintain extensive archives of hand-copied technical manuals and maintenance procedures, but even these carefully preserved documents contain gaps and inconsistencies that make proper knight servicing increasingly difficult with each passing generation. The succession crises that plague many knight houses reflect the intersection of declining populations with the complex inheritance laws that govern feudal society, creating political instability that weakens these institutions precisely when they face their greatest external threats. House Volker experienced a devastating succession war in the early 41st millennium, when the death of their High King left 3 potential heirs with equally valid claims to the throne, leading to a civil conflict that destroyed half their knight forces and left their homeworld vulnerable to Zeno's invasion. The resolution of this crisis required intervention from Forge World Lucius and the establishment of new succession protocols that prioritized genetic compatibility over traditional primogeniture, fundamentally altering the house's political structure in ways that continue to create tension among their noble bloodlines. The constant need to defend against multiple simultaneous threats has stretched knight house resources beyond their sustainable limits, forcing difficult choices between maintaining their war machines and protecting their territories from the endless stream of enemies that seek to exploit imperial weakness. House Raven faces ongoing pressure from Orquois advancing through the Segmentum Solar, while simultaneously dealing with chaos cultist uprisings within their own territories, and the persistent threat of Tyrannid splinter fleets that probe their outer defensive perimeters. Their knights operate on continuous deployment schedules that allow minimal time for proper maintenance between combat operations, leading to accelerated wear on critical systems and increased risk of catastrophic failures during crucial battles. The emergence of new Xenos threats in the wake of the Great Rift has forced knight houses to develop tactical doctrines for engaging enemies whose capabilities and objectives remain poorly understood by Imperial military analysts. The Tau Empire's expansion into territories traditionally defended by knight houses has created conflicts that challenge conventional Imperial tactical assumptions, as Tau forces demonstrate technological sophistication and coordination that rivals Imperial capabilities while employing battlefield tactics specifically designed to counter heavy assault units like Imperial Knights. House Cadmus learned through bitter experience that their traditional siege warfare expertise proved inadequate against Tau defensive systems that incorporated advanced sensor networks, automated weapon platforms, and crisis suit teams capable of engaging knights at extreme range while maintaining superior mobility. The Tyrannid hive fleets that continue to probe Imperial defenses throughout the galaxy pose particularly severe challenges for knight houses, as these biological enemies demonstrate adaptive capabilities that allow them to develop countermeasures against specific knight tactics and weapon systems within the span of individual campaigns. House Griffith encountered hive fleet Jormungandr elements that had evolved specialized bioforms capable of burrowing beneath knight positions and attacking their vulnerable leg joints, forcing the house to modify their tactical deployment patterns and develop new coordination procedures with supporting Imperial Guard units. The psychological impact of facing enemies that could literally evolve countermeasures during ongoing battles proved as challenging as the tactical adaptations required, as knight pilots found their traditional advantages in firepower and armor protection gradually neutralized by biological innovation. The participation of knight houses in the 13th Black Crusade demonstrated both their continued military value and the severe limitations that current resource constraints place on their operational effectiveness. House Terran committed significant forces to the defense of Cadia, their knights fighting alongside Space Marine chapters and Imperial Guard regiments in desperate battles that tested every system and capability their war machines possessed. The intensity of combat during the Cadian campaign revealed critical weaknesses in knight logistics and maintenance support, as extended operations without proper servicing led to increasing numbers of mechanical failures and system degradations that could not be addressed under battlefield conditions. The fall of Cadia created massive disruption to knight house deployment patterns throughout the Segmentum Obscurus, as houses that had maintained defensive positions for centuries found themselves forced to relocate to new strategic positions while adapting to tactical situations that bore little resemblance to their traditional operational parameters. House Morton's knights participated in the evacuation operations that rescued Imperial forces from the dying world, their war machines serving as mobile command centers and heavy weapons platforms during the chaotic retreat that followed the planet's destruction. The experience of witnessing an entire world's death through chaos intervention profoundly affected the house's pilots, many of whom reported persistent nightmares and psychological disturbances that required extensive counseling and spiritual purification procedures. The Indomitus Crusade provided knight houses with opportunities to demonstrate their continued relevance to Imperial military operations, while highlighting the organizational challenges that 10 millennia of gradual decline had created within their feudal structures. Roboute Guilliman's return brought new strategic priorities and tactical doctrines that required significant adaptations from knight houses accustomed to operating according to traditions established during the Great Crusade. The Primarch's emphasis on coordination between different Imperial military branches created opportunities for knight forces to integrate more effectively with Space Marine chapters and Imperial Guard regiments, but also revealed gaps in their training and equipment that limited their ability to exploit these new cooperative frameworks. House Raven's participation in the Indomitus Crusade showcased the potential effectiveness of properly supported knight forces, while demonstrating the resource investments required to maintain these capabilities across extended campaign periods. Their knights served as the spearhead for multiple planetary liberation operations, their firepower and mobility proving decisive in breaking through enemy defensive positions that had resisted conventional Imperial assault forces. However, the intensive combat operations required constant logistical support from Mechanicus forces and specialized maintenance teams that diverted resources from other critical Imperial military priorities, highlighting the complex cost-benefit calculations that govern knight deployment decisions in the current strategic environment. The establishment of new knight worlds during the Indomitus Crusade represented attempts to expand the recruitment base for these elite forces while creating strategic reserves that could respond to emerging threats throughout Imperial space. These colonization efforts faced enormous challenges in establishing the industrial infrastructure and cultural traditions necessary to support knight operations, as the knowledge and resources required for successful knight world development had become increasingly scarce over the millennia. The first generation of colonists sent to establish these new worlds included veteran knight pilots and experienced sacristans, whose expertise would be essential for creating functional feudal societies. But their small numbers and advanced age created concerns about the long-term viability of these ambitious projects. The integration of Primaris Space Marines into Imperial military operations created new opportunities for Knight Astartes cooperation, while requiring adaptations to coordination procedures that had remained largely unchanged since the Horus Heresy. The enhanced capabilities and new equipment systems that characterized Primaris forces complemented Knight strengths in different ways compared to traditional Space Marines, creating tactical possibilities that experienced commanders were still learning to exploit effectively. House Griffith developed experimental coordination protocols with several Primaris chapters that emphasized rapid deployment and deep strike operations, their knights providing heavy weapons support for Primaris assault forces while benefiting from enhanced reconnaissance and target designation capabilities that the new Space Marines could provide. The ongoing threat from various Tyrannid Hive fleet tendrils continues to test Knight House defensive capabilities, while forcing tactical innovations that challenge traditional approaches to anti-Xenos warfare. The biological adaptability that characterizes Tyrannid forces creates constantly evolving tactical challenges that require Knight pilots to abandon conventional operational patterns in favor of flexible response strategies that can adapt to enemy innovations in real time. House Cadmus has developed specialized anti-Tyrannid tactics that emphasize mobility and concentrated firepower over traditional siege warfare techniques, their pilots learning to engage bioforms that can rapidly adapt to conventional Knight weapons and defensive systems. The emergence of genestealer cult infiltration within Knight world populations represents a particularly insidious threat that combines the traditional challenges of internal rebellion with the supernatural coordination and alien objectives that characterize Tyrannid-related enemies. Several Knight houses have discovered extensive cult networks operating within their serf populations and even among minor noble bloodlines, creating security challenges that require fundamental changes to traditional feudal governance structures. The paranoia and surveillance measures necessary to counter genestealer infiltration conflict with the trust relationships and personal bonds that have traditionally characterized Knight world society, creating social tensions that weaken these communities precisely when they face their greatest external threats. The resource constraints that limit Knight House military effectiveness in the current era reflect the broader technological and industrial decline that affects the entire Imperium, as the manufacturing capabilities and technical knowledge necessary to maintain sophisticated war machines become increasingly scarce with each passing century. The specialized components required for Knight maintenance often require months or years to acquire through Imperial supply networks, forcing houses to carefully prioritize their resource allocation while accepting increased risks of mechanical failure during critical operations. The ammunition requirements for knight weapon systems create additional logistical challenges, as the exotic materials and precision manufacturing techniques required for specialized warheads and energy weapon components strain Imperial production capabilities that are already stretched beyond their sustainable limits. The enduring importance of knight houses to the Imperium's military might extend far beyond their immediate battlefield contributions to encompass their role as living symbols of humanity's noble heritage from the dark age of technology. In an era when most Imperial citizens know ancient human civilization only through fragmented legends and corrupted data files, the Knight worlds preserve functional examples of technologies and social structures that demonstrate what humanity once achieved during its golden age of expansion. The towering war machines that stride across battlefields throughout the galaxy serve as tangible proof that humans once commanded technologies that rivaled or exceeded anything the Imperium can produce in the 41st millennium, while the feudal societies that maintain these ancient weapons demonstrate that honor, duty, and martial excellence remain viable foundations for human civilization, even in the face of constant warfare and technological decline. The psychological impact of knight forces on Imperial morale cannot be overstated, as their presence on battlefields provides hope and inspiration to ordinary soldiers who might otherwise despair when facing the overwhelming threats that assail humanity from all directions. When Imperial Guard regiments see knight banners advancing alongside their own formations, they witness proof that the Emperor's vision for humanity endures despite 10 millennia of warfare and corruption. The sight of these towering war machines, their heraldry proclaiming ancient oaths of loyalty to the Golden Throne, reinforces the fundamental Imperial doctrine that humanity possesses the strength and nobility necessary to survive in a hostile galaxy. This symbolic value proves particularly crucial during defensive operations, where civilian populations must maintain hope despite facing seemingly insurmountable odds, as knight forces represent the continuation of human greatness across the vast span of history that separates the current era from humanity's greatest achievements. The relationship between knight houses and Primaris Space Marines has evolved rapidly since Robute Guilliman's return, creating new paradigms for cooperation that build upon traditional Astartes knight partnerships, while incorporating the enhanced capabilities that characterize the Primarch's latest military innovations. The superior physical capabilities and advanced equipment systems that distinguish Primaris Marines from their traditional counterparts complement knight strengths in ways that create tactical opportunities unavailable to previous generations of Imperial commanders. Primaris intercessors provide more effective infantry support for knight operations than conventional Space Marines, their enhanced range and firepower allowing them to engage threats at distances where they can coordinate effectively with knight weapon systems while maintaining their own tactical flexibility. The deployment of Primaris repulsor tanks alongside knight forces has created combined arms formations that maximize the mobility advantages of both unit types while providing comprehensive battlefield coverage against multiple threat categories. These hover tanks can match the pace of advancing knights while providing anti-aircraft capabilities and infantry support that complement the heavy assault role that knights fulfill in combined operations. The coordination procedures developed for these mixed formations emphasize rapid maneuver and concentrated firepower, allowing Imperial commanders to exploit breakthrough opportunities with unprecedented speed while maintaining the defensive capabilities necessary to counter enemy responses. House Raven has pioneered several tactical innovations that integrate Primaris armor support with knight operations, their pilots learning to coordinate movement patterns and target selection with repulsor crews in ways that maximize the effectiveness of both unit types. The Primaris Redemptor Dreadnought program has created particularly interesting opportunities for cooperation with Knight forces, as these enhanced war machines possess capabilities that bridge the gap between traditional Space Marine equipment and Knight-scale weapon systems. The firepower and durability that Redemptor dreadnoughts provide allow them to operate alongside Knights in roles that would overwhelm conventional dreadnought chassis, while their smaller size and greater agility enable them to support Knight operations in terrain or tactical situations where larger war machines might prove unwieldy. Several Knight houses have developed specific protocols for coordinating with Redemptor-equipped Space Marine forces, recognizing that these enhanced war machines can provide tactical capabilities that complement Knight strengths while addressing some of their traditional vulnerabilities. The mutual adaptation of tactics and technology between Knight houses and Primaris forces has produced innovations that benefit both military traditions while advancing the broader Imperial goal of maximizing combat effectiveness against increasingly dangerous enemies. Primaris forces have adopted communication protocols and battlefield coordination procedures originally developed for Knight operations, allowing them to integrate more effectively with other Imperial military units that operate on scales similar to Knight formations. The enhanced sensor systems and targeting capabilities that characterize Primaris equipment provide valuable intelligence support for Knight operations, while Knight mobility and firepower create opportunities for Primaris forces to exploit tactical advantages that their enhanced capabilities make possible. The technological exchange between Knight houses and Primaris development programs has produced equipment modifications and tactical innovations that enhance the effectiveness of both force types while advancing Imperial understanding of how ancient technologies can be adapted to meet current operational requirements. Several Forge Worlds have initiated research programs that examine how Primaris weapon systems might be scaled up for Knight deployment, while Knight House technical specialists have contributed expertise about power management and targeting systems that has influenced Primaris equipment development. These collaborative efforts remain limited by the security restrictions that surround both Knight technologies and Primaris development programs, but the initial results suggest significant potential for future innovations that could enhance Imperial military capabilities across multiple force categories. The ongoing search for lost Knight worlds and standard template construct databases represents one of the most critical long-term priorities for ensuring the survival and expansion of the Knight orders, as the discovery of intact technological archives or functional Knight production facilities could provide resources essential for reversing the gradual decline that threatens these ancient institutions. Explorator expeditions throughout the galaxy continue to investigate reports of human ruins and abandoned colonies that might contain Knight-related technologies or populations, though the vast scale of the galaxy and the dangers that surround most unexplored regions make these searches extremely challenging and resource-intensive. The potential rewards justify these investments, as even a single intact STC database could provide manufacturing instructions for Knight components that have become irreplaceable through conventional Imperial production methods. The Adeptus Mechanicus has established specialized explorator fleets dedicated specifically to Knight-related archaeological expeditions, recognizing that the technological knowledge contained in lost Knight facilities often exceeds the value of conventional archaeotech discoveries. These expeditions incorporate Knight forces as both exploration assets and security elements, their war machines providing the firepower and mobility necessary to investigate dangerous sites, while their pilots contribute expertise about Knight technologies that proves essential for evaluating discovered materials. House Tyrannis has contributed Knights and technical specialists to numerous explorator expeditions, their intimate knowledge of ancient Knight systems making them invaluable partners for missions that might encounter intact Throne Mechanicum installations or corrupted knight facilities that require specialized handling procedures. The discovery of lost knight variants during these archaeological expeditions has provided glimpses of the technological diversity that characterized knight development during the Dark Age of technology, revealing design concepts and capability combinations that exceed anything available to current Imperial forces. Recent explorator missions have uncovered fragmentary evidence of knight patterns that incorporated advanced stealth systems, exotic weapon configurations, and defensive technologies that suggest the original knight designers possessed far greater technical sophistication than Imperial engineers have previously understood. The incomplete nature of these discoveries has prevented full reconstruction of these advanced designs, but the technical principles they reveal continue to influence current knight development programs and provide inspiration for modifications that enhance existing knight capabilities. The potential for discovering new knight variants through continued exploration efforts represents one of the most promising avenues for addressing the resource constraints and technological limitations that currently restrict knight house effectiveness. The standard template construct databases that might exist on undiscovered knight worlds could contain manufacturing instructions for specialized knight patterns designed to address specific tactical requirements that current Imperial forces struggle to meet effectively. Anti-Tyranid knight variants might incorporate biological warfare systems and adaptive armor configurations that could provide decisive advantages against Hive fleet incursions, while anti-chaos patterns might feature enhanced psychic shielding and blessed weapon systems specifically designed to combat demonic enemies and corrupted war machines. The search for lost forge worlds that maintained knight production capabilities during the Dark Age of technology has intensified following the Great Rift's emergence, as Imperial authorities recognize that the technological knowledge contained in such facilities might prove essential for maintaining knight forces during the current crisis. Several explorator expeditions have investigated star systems that show evidence of ancient industrial activity, searching for intact manufacturing complexes that might retain the specialized equipment and technical databases necessary for knight production. The challenges involved in these searches extend beyond simple navigation and exploration to encompass the complex archaeological and technical analysis required to evaluate discovered facilities while avoiding the dangers that often surround ancient human ruins. The eternal struggle to maintain the honor and traditions of the Knight Orders, while adapting to the ever-changing threats of the 41st millennium, creates ongoing tensions within Knight society that influence every aspect of their military and political development. The feudal traditions that define Knight identity emphasize personal honor, hereditary obligation, and adherence to ancient customs that have provided stability and continuity across millennia of warfare and social change. However, the unprecedented challenges that characterize the current era often require tactical and strategic adaptations that conflict with traditional approaches to warfare and governance, forcing Knight houses to balance their commitment to ancient ways with the practical necessities of survival in an increasingly hostile galaxy. The Codex Chivalric continues to serve as the fundamental framework for noble behavior and military conduct, but its interpretation and application have evolved significantly in response to threats that the original authors could never have anticipated. The traditional emphasis on personal combat and individual heroism remains central to Knight identity, but houses have developed new tactical doctrines that incorporate modern understanding of combined arms warfare and multi-unit coordination, while preserving the essential elements of chivalric conduct. The challenge lies in maintaining the spiritual and cultural foundations that make knights effective, while adapting their operational methods to meet enemies whose capabilities and objectives transcend the scope of conventional warfare. The recruitment challenges that face many knight houses in the current era have forced adaptations to traditional bloodline requirements and inheritance practices that preserve the genetic compatibility necessary for knight piloting, while expanding the potential pool of candidates available for training. Several houses have implemented genetic screening programs that identify individuals with partial compatibility ratings, who might be developed into effective pilots through enhanced training and medical intervention, though these programs remain controversial within traditional knight society. The success of these experimental recruitment methods could determine whether the knight orders can maintain their strength through the current crisis or face gradual decline as their traditional bloodlines become insufficient to support their military obligations. The technological adaptations that knight houses have implemented to address current threats demonstrate their capacity for innovation, while highlighting the constraints that limited manufacturing capabilities place on their ability to respond to new challenges. The modification of existing knight weapon systems to address specific enemy capabilities has become a critical survival skill for house technical specialists, who must balance the need for enhanced effectiveness against the risk of damaging irreplaceable ancient systems through unauthorized modifications. The development of improvised ammunition types, jury-rigged targeting systems, and field-expedient repairs has become routine for many houses, though these adaptations often compromise long-term reliability in exchange for immediate tactical advantages. The cultural evolution that knight society has undergone in response to current challenges reflects the fundamental adaptability that has allowed these institutions to survive across 10 millennia of constant warfare and social upheaval. The integration of new religious observances that acknowledge both the emperor's divinity and the machine spirit's sacred nature has created theological frameworks that satisfy imperial authorities while preserving the spiritual traditions that define knight identity. The adoption of modified training programs that incorporate lessons learned from recent conflicts while maintaining traditional emphasis on honor and martial virtue demonstrates how knight society can evolve without losing its essential characteristics. The future prospects for the knight orders depend largely on their ability to resolve the fundamental tensions between tradition and adaptation that define their current situation, as the challenges they face will likely intensify rather than diminish in the coming centuries. The resource constraints that limit their current effectiveness will require innovative solutions that might include closer integration with other imperial institutions, technological partnerships that transcend traditional boundaries, or fundamental changes to the feudal structures that have defined knight society throughout their history. The success of these adaptations will determine whether the knight orders can continue to serve as symbols of human nobility and technological achievement, or face gradual extinction as the galaxy's increasing dangers overwhelm their capacity to respond effectively. The legacy of the knight orders extends far beyond their immediate military contributions to encompass their role as guardians of human heritage and exemplars of the virtues that define imperial civilization at its best. Their towering war machines serve as monuments to human achievement that inspire loyalty and dedication among imperial citizens who might otherwise despair in the face of seemingly insurmountable challenges. The feudal societies that maintain these ancient weapons demonstrate that honor, courage, and duty remain viable foundations for human organization, despite the corruption and brutality that characterize much of the 41st millennium. As the Imperium faces its darkest hour since the Horus Heresy, the knight houses stand ready to defend not only human territory and population, but the ideals and traditions that make human civilization worth preserving. The knight worlds represent humanity's connection to its greatest achievements, their ancient technologies and noble traditions serving as beacons of hope in an age of darkness. Whether these proud warriors can adapt sufficiently to meet the unprecedented challenges of the current era, while preserving the essential elements of their identity, will determine not only their own survival, but the fate of one of the Imperium's most potent symbols of human greatness. In the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war, The Knights stand as eternal guardians of humanity's noble past and uncertain future, their oath-sworn loyalty to the Golden Throne unwavering despite the mounting darkness that threatens to engulf the galaxy. The thunder of their footsteps and the roar of their weapons echo across 1,000 worlds, proclaiming that while the Knight orders endure, the flame of human nobility shall never be extinguished.